Chapter 1403. The Great Light Temple, or rather, the people from the Heavenly Luo Temple, had actually appeared here. This surprised Chu Xiu. The original Divine Palace was not part of the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, or Demon. To be more precise, it was closer to the Taoism and Demon paths. It had nothing to do with the Buddhist sect. What were they doing here? Su Yun said in a deep voice, Chu Xiu, the martial world is so big. It's not your place alone. Why can you come here and we can't? Chu Xiu shook his head lightly and said, Master Su Yun, you seem to have made a mistake. You are no longer the Great Light Temple's Wangyan Zen Hall's chief, and the Kunlun Devil cult is no longer the half-dead Kunlun Devil cult of the past. There is a huge difference between a martial immortal and a non-martial immortal. Do you think I still need to reason with you? Last time, the Heavenly Luo Temple's Zen Master Ji Kong came here and used Dugu Weiwei's blood essence to exchange for your two factions' residences. He also gave you a chance to live. Now, you insist on coming to me. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? When he shouted the last word, the chilling murderous intent affected the rules of the entire world. It turned into a raging dragon and surged towards Su Yun. Previously, Chu Xiu had clearly become a martial immortal, but he did not kill the Great Light Temple. It was not because he was benevolent, nor was it because Chu Xiu was indecisive. It was because there was no need to. There were countless people in the world who hated him, and even more people who wanted to kill him. If he had to kill them one by one, wouldn't Chu Xiu die of exhaustion? The existences that could be taken seriously by the current Chu Xiu were the hierarch and temple master of the Sanskrit sect, the revered one of the Heavenly Luo Temple, and Zen Master Ji Shan. Facing these people, Chu Xiu would use all his energy to deal with them. To put it bluntly, Su Yun and even the reborn Rama were no longer qualified to be his opponents. For such existences, Chu Xiu would not touch them before they provoked him. He was also too lazy to do so. However, if they really provoked him and blocked his path, Chu Xiu would definitely not tolerate it. Right at this moment, a Buddhist light suddenly descended and blocked Chu Xiu's imposing attack. The head of the Earth Treasury, Ji Kong, Fajing, and several martial immortals from the Heavenly Luo Temple descended together. Cult Master Chu is now the master of the Eastern region, and he's a martial immortal at the fifth heaven. For him to attack a martial immortal who's not even a martial immortal, that's a bit unreasonable. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Venerable Su Yun was my senior in the past. In the martial Tao, those who have reached the pinnacle come first. The weak are not in the right. Master Jikong, what do you mean by this? No matter how much hatred I, Chu Xiu, attract, there's no need for me to be targeted by the Heavenly Luo Temple, right? I've just found a relic here, and you want to rob it? Could it be that the Heavenly Luo Temple is really prepared to fight to the death with the Kunlun Devil cult? Jikong was taken aback. Rob your relic? This is clearly the 10,000 Buddha temple left behind by the ancestors of the Buddhist sect. Although Cult Master Chu is proficient in Buddhist sect techniques, you're not a member of the Buddhist sect. Strictly speaking, you're the one who robbed the Heavenly Luo Temple's relic. Chu Xiu looked at Pak Dong Lai and Hui Yingqi with a puzzled expression. If these two found the wrong place, it would be a joke. Although Chu Xiu didn't know what kind of place the 10,000 Buddha temple was, it definitely wouldn't be as helpful to him as the original God Palace. Otherwise, Tianhun wouldn't have asked him to dig up the original God Palace. Upon seeing this, Pak Dong Lai said hurriedly, Official Chu, we're definitely not mistaken. We dug up the stone tablet with the original God Palace's mark here. Zen Master Jikong frowned and said, the Heavenly Luo Temple's deduction can't be wrong. The 10,000 Buddha temple is here because the chief of the Heavenly Luo Temple's Qinmu Pavilion used the relic of the 10,000 Buddha temple as a guide. He spent 10 years of his lifespan to deduce this. It can't be wrong. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll know once we dig it out. Chu Xiu used the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. With a punch, an earth dragon flipped over and the entire coast was smashed by Chu Xiu. Endless waves flowed back into the sea, looking very mysterious. Zen Master Jikong frowned slightly when he saw Chu Xiu's simple and crude action. However, he didn't say anything. As Chu Xiu's punch landed, something really emerged from the coast that was originally covered by seawater. It was a huge ball of light. One side was pale green, while the other side was glowing with golden Buddha light. Through the ball of light, one could vaguely see various pavilions and terraces. It was obviously an independent space. At the sight of this, everyone present instantly understood what was going on. Pak Donglai and Huo Yingqi didn't find the wrong place. Similarly, the Heavenly Luo Temple's deduction wasn't wrong either. The original God Palace and the 10,000 Buddha Temple were both here. However, when the upper mortal world and lower mortal world merged, some changes happened to them. The two independent spaces, which might have been closer to each other, actually shifted when they merged. They started to overlap and eventually, the two ruins merged together. This was interesting. The original God Palace and the 10,000 Buddha Temple's secret realms merged together. Who knew what would happen to the things inside? If it had been the relationship between Chu Xiu and the Heavenly Luo Temple in the past, they might have teamed up to explore after discussing the conditions. However, it was obvious that it was impossible now. Therefore, at this moment, both sides were ready to fight and were ready to fight to decide the ownership of the secret realms. Zen Master Jikong said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, are you really not going to give it to us? The 10,000 Buddha Temple is very important to the Heavenly Luo Temple. If you give it to us, the Heavenly Luo Temple will definitely reward you generously." Chu Xiu said slowly, "I can give it to you, but the problem is, do you have what I want? Do you have another 100 or 80 drops of Dugu Weiwei's essence blood? Or the origin, can the Heavenly Luo Temple produce it?" Zen Master Jikong frowned and said, "Cult Master Chu, you are making things difficult for us. The Heavenly Luo Temple has already given away its essence blood. Moreover, the origin is an extremely precious existence. How can the Heavenly Luo Temple have it? On the contrary, if I'm not wrong, Cult Master Chu, you should have one origin. If one isn't enough, do you want a second one?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "No one will complain about having too many good things. Since the Heavenly Luo Temple can't give me what I want, and I don't want to give it to you, things are much simpler. Martial artists still have to rely on their strength to determine the winner. Let's just fight." As he said that, Chu Xiu's hand was already on the broken array formation at his waist. Zen Master Jikong frowned when he saw this. The Heavenly Luo Temple wasn't afraid of fighting, but it didn't want to engage in a meaningless battle. Chu Xiu's way of doing things was simple and crude, but he didn't want to fight here. Besides, he might not be able to win. He had witnessed Chu Xiu's strength in the gamble last time. Chu Xiu wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting against martial artists at the second or even the third heavenly layer. "Hold on." Chu Xiu looked at Zen Master Jikong and said, "Oh? Master Jikong, are you going to give it to me?" Zen Master Jikong shook his head and said, "Of course not. The Myriad Buddha Palace is very important to the Heavenly Luo Temple. We will definitely not give it to you. But at the same time, this remnant is also very important to Cult Master Chu. So, you won't give it to me. Since no one wants to give it to you, it wouldn't be worth it if we were to fight for real. Why don't we both make a bet? We'll send our disciples below the third heavenly layer of martial immortal, no more than 10 of them, to enter and fight for it. Victory or defeat doesn't depend on us, but on our disciples. If one side is in danger, you and I can also save them. However, the side that makes a move first will be considered to have lost and will have to retreat. What do you think, Cult Master Chu?" Chu Xiu had a faint smile on his face. "Master Jikong, as an eminent monk of the Buddhist sect, you like to gamble so much? You gambled last time and you're going to gamble this time?" Zen Master Jikong shook his head and said, "That's why I can't become a Buddha. A little gambling is fun. Gambling once in a while can avoid some losses. Isn't that good? Does Cult Master Chu dare to make this bet?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Why wouldn't I dare?" With a smile on his face, Zen Master Jikong immediately ordered several first and second heavenly layer of martial immortals from the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple, as well as several arcane understanding realm cultivators, including Su Yun, to step forward. Previously, when he fought against Chu Xiu, he wasn't able to defeat Chu Xiu. He admitted that Chu Xiu's battle prowess was indeed shocking. It was no wonder such a person could stir up a storm in the entire Daoist and lower realms. However, while he admitted that Chu Xiu was strong, he didn't believe that the Kunlun devil cult could be as strong as him. For a sect like the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple, its disciples were all nurtured generation after generation. Practically every generation had a few outstanding cultivators. It could be said that none of the cultivators from the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple were weak. All of their disciples were above the same level, let alone martial immortals. Therefore, Zen Master Jikong was very confident in this bet. Chu Xiu said to Shang Tianliang and Lu Fengxian, City Master Shang, Brother Lu, I'll leave it to you. Shang Tianliang and Lu Fengxian nodded calmly. Lu Jianghu, who had stepped into the martial immortal realm, couldn't help but ask, what about me? Chu Xiu glanced at him and said, don't embarrass yourself. Lu Jianghu's eyes widened. He felt that Chu Xiu was targeting him. Shang Tianliang and Lu Fengxian were left to them. Why must I embarrass myself? Before Lu Jianghu could refute, the people from the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple had already stepped forward. They also stepped forward and both sides entered the space. A white light flashed. When Lu Fengxian and the others stepped into the space, distorted palaces appeared in front of them. Some of them had even been completely torn apart and piled up together, becoming ruins. These palaces were obviously of two different styles. The 10,000 Buddha Temple and the Divine Origin Palace had completely overlapped. Lu Fengxian asked Shang Tianliang and Lu Jianghu, City Master Shang, Senior Lu, should we explore first or make a move first? Before Shang Tianliang could speak, Lu Jianghu stood up and sneered, explore? Explore my ass. Let's get rid of these bald donkeys first. After that, we can explore however we want. Chapter 1404. After stepping into the martial immortal realm, Lu Jianghu's arrogance skyrocketed. He had always treated the position of the four demon exalted as an obsession. Of course, it was still an obsession now. However, after becoming a martial immortal, his strength even surpassed the four demon exalted. At the same time, Lu Jianghu was bursting with confidence. Chu Xiu told him not to embarrass himself. Today, he, demon exalted Lu, would properly teach these bald donkeys a lesson. The Kunlun devil cult did not only have Chu Xiu as a powerful individual. He, Lu Jianghu, was not to be trifled with either. Before the Heavenly Treasure Temple could react, they saw Lu Jianghu rushing over. That stunned them. The Kunlun devil cult was actually so aggressive? Could he be the strongest expert under Chu Xiu? On the Heavenly Treasure Temple's side, a bare-chested, fierce-looking middle-aged monk asked Su Yun, who is he? Could he be a peak expert under Chu Xiu? He was the head of the Skanda Hall of the Heavenly Treasure Temple, Ji Sheng, a second-layer martial immortal. Although he was in the same generation as Zen Master Jishan and the others, he was one of the younger heads of the Heavenly Treasure Temple. Su Yun lightly snorted and said, what expert? This person was a hall master under Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago. Due to some reason, his primordial spirit was sealed. 500 years later, he was released and became a subordinate of Chu Xiu. 500 years ago, he wasn't even a demon exalted. 500 years later, he naturally isn't much of a character either. Be careful of Lu Fengxian. He is an elite of the Longhu list in the same generation as Chu Xiu. He once obtained the inheritance of the ancient demon god Lu Wenho. He possesses unparalleled strength and shocking talent. As for that Shang Tianliang, I wonder where Chu Xiu found him. Although he is old, his strength is shocking. He is very difficult to deal with. Su Yun's words were not spoken through voice transmission. Instead, he spoke them out loud. That immediately made Lu Jianghu furious. What did he mean by not being a demon lord was not a character? With his current strength, even if the Heartless Demon Venerable and the Battle Martial Demon Venerable from 500 years ago came together, he would still be able to beat them up. Of course, he couldn't beat the Red Lotus demon venerable, nor could he bear to. A boundless sea of blood surged behind Lujiang River, surging towards the warriors of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple. Ji Xing shouted and stepped out. His hands formed a mudra, and in an instant, the Buddha's light shone brightly, and the image of an Empyrean god appeared behind him. Guardian Skanda descended to subdue demons. As that seal descended, the entire world seemed to tremble under this Buddhist seal. It was the pinnacle of power. The boundless sea of blood was suppressed by this Buddhist seal. In an instant, it was torn apart and turned into countless strands of blood dancing in the air. Ji Xing nodded lightly. It seemed that Su Yun was right. This Lu Jiang, he really wasn't a powerful person. Although he was a martial immortal, his strength and foundation were too weak. He was unable to pose a threat to Chu Feng. Judging by his appearance, he had only just stepped into the martial immortal realm. He had yet to completely familiarize himself with his own power. However, in the next moment, the scattered strands of blood suddenly gathered around Ji Xing's body. They suddenly turned into a huge cocoon of blood, wrapping him within. Lu Jiang, he formed a mudra with his hands and laughed coldly. Die, bald donkey. As he spoke, the cocoon of blood suddenly pulsed rhythmically, like a beating heart. Trapped within, Ji Xing's entire body's qi and blood were connected to the cocoon of blood. As the cocoon pulsed rhythmically, it suddenly erupted. His heart felt like it was about to explode. The warriors of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple behind him felt that something was amiss. They quickly attacked together, wanting to destroy the cocoon of blood. However, in the instant that they attacked, the cocoon of blood exploded on its own, sending Ji Xing flying. Blood splattered everywhere, and Ji Xing's face became incomparably pale. So this is the guy you were talking about, a nobody? Ji Xing glared furiously at Su Yun. If it wasn't for Zen Master Ji Shan's instructions to treat Su Yun and Rama, who had joined later, with a good attitude to win their hearts, Ji Xing would have already started cursing them. Su Yun opened his mouth, but he was unable to say anything. That was because Lu Jiang, he was indeed not the most famous among the people under Chu Xiu. 500 years ago, everyone would remember Dugu Weiwei and the 4 great demon sovereigns. However, how many halls, vassals and demon envoys did the Kunlun devil cult have back then have? Even if there weren't 100, there were at least 99. Even if Lu Jiang, he was the strongest among them, it was difficult for his fame to be spread to the later generations. However, that did not mean that Lu Jiang, he was a mediocre person. 80% of his blood demon divine technique was self-created, and 20% came from Dugu Weiwei's guidance and improvement. It could be said that his martial path came from self-discovery. He walked an absolutely independent martial path, and he could establish his own sect no matter where he was. Although the Daoist martial path was prosperous, the majority of martial immortals still walked on the martial path of others. The sea of blood behind Lu Jiang, he surged. He pointed at Ji Xing and the others and sneered, "Remember, I am Lu Jiang He, the Blood Sea Demon Sovereign. Otherwise, when your head is chopped off, you won't know who killed you." Lu Jiang He's words attracted too much hatred. The people of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple were instantly enraged. They had never seen such an arrogant person. With a gloomy expression, Ji Xing waved his hand. All of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple's cultivators shone with Buddhist light and rushed out. Shang Tianliang shook his head helplessly. He was curious if Lu Jiang, he had only been sleeping for the 500 years he was imprisoned. Why was he getting weaker and weaker? However, since Lu Jiang, he had successfully attracted hatred, they had no choice but to rush forward. Although Shang Tianliang and the other 2 had just stepped into the martial immortal realm, they had deep foundations, so they did not notice any instability in their power. Lu Fengxian held the unparalleled halberd in his hand. The pitch-black demonic aura around his body condensed into a battle armor. He used the 9 heavens fiend golden body to the extreme. When the halberd smashed down, it involuntarily affected the rules of power. It was infinitely close to a divine ability. The person in front of him was also a martial immortal at the 2nd layer of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple. However, in terms of power, he was unable to fight back against Lu Fengxian. With a furious shout, golden Sanskrit appeared around the cultivator's body and enveloped him. It was the indestructible golden body. Although he had not cultivated it to great success, it was not weak. At this moment, all of Lu Fengxian's qi and blood condensed. His scorching qi and blood burned like raging flames. The power condensed in his arms, causing the pitch-black demonic aura of the nine heavens fiend golden body to be dyed red. In the next instant, the halberd smashed down. Suddenly, a violent roar came from the sky. The space was torn and trembled. The extreme power even shook the small space that contained the two remnants, causing the outside world to tremble. The complexion of the heavenly net treasure temple cultivator who unleashed the indestructible golden body changed. He formed a swastika with his hand and placed it before his body. However, in the next instant, before the extreme power, before the unparalleled halberd that was comparable to a divine ability, the swastika shattered. The indestructible golden body shattered as well. His entire body was sent flying by Lu Fengxian's halberd. That cultivator sprayed out blood along the way. Some traces of blood could also be seen on Lu Fengxian's arms. However, he scratched his head in a slightly embarrassed manner. This was the first time he had used the power of a martial immortal. He was unable to control it and was too ruthless. When Shang Tianliang saw that, he couldn't help shaking his head and said, "The younger generation will surpass us in time." In Shang Tianliang's opinion, Lu Fengxian's strength could already be considered to be at the peak of the younger generation. In fact, even he felt ashamed of himself. Of course, Shang Tianliang did not compare himself to Chu Xiu. In his eyes, a monster like Chu Xiu was no longer worth comparing himself to. Not wanting to be too inferior to a member of the younger generation, Shang Tianliang took a step forward. Then, a strange rhythm began to change around him. After his withering glory domain reached the martial immortal realm, it was able to affect time and space. When he shot out his fist, the martial immortal before him was shocked to discover that his power was dissipating non-stop. To be exact, it was not dissipating. Rather, the power around his body was dissipating at a rate 10 times, or even several tens of times faster than others. Right after he attacked, his power began to dissipate with the passage of time. In the end, his power became incomparably weak. It was so weak that it posed no threat at all. As for Shang Tianliang's fist, it twisted the space around him, causing the surrounding laws to distort. The martial immortal's body seemed to have been imprisoned, unable to break free. Shatter! The martial immortal from the Tianluo treasure temple shouted. Boundless qi and blood around him soared into the sky. The Buddha's Dharma image appeared behind him, but it was mixed with a trace of blood. Since the laws had already been distorted, he might as well not use them. He could use pure power to break free. Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, "Why are the martial immortals so hot-tempered now? They've only just arrived and they're already ready to fight with their lives on the line?" As Shang Tianliang's voice fell, he formed a hand seal and a strange power bloomed. Flowers wilted and flowers bloomed. The 4 seasons withered and flourished. Shang Tianliang had been growing vegetables ever since he came out of the oasis. This was not only a nostalgia or obsession for the environment of the oasis, but also the path of martial arts that he had persisted on. There were no soaring clouds, nor was there a majestic power strong enough to trigger the power of laws. It was as if the 4 seasons of the great Tao of heaven and earth had descended in front of the Tianluo treasure temple martial immortal. He could not break free, nor could he find a target to break free from. Under that power, the powerful Buddha's Dharma image that he had just condensed began to shatter and dissipate. In an instant, the martial immortal's eyes became extremely shocked. This power did not seem to belong to Shang Tianliang, but to the world. Human power could be resisted and reversed, but how could the power of heaven and earth be reversed? In just a few moves, Shang Tianliang and the other martial immortals under Chu Xiu had gained the upper hand. It could be said that they had completely suppressed the Tianluo treasure temple martial immortal. At that moment, in the outside world, Chu Xiu was calm and unruffled as he looked at Jikong, who had an ugly expression on his face. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Master Jikong, your gambling luck isn't that good. You've lost again. Chapter 1405. Ji Kong's luck in gambling was not good. Or rather, the timing he chose was not good. Had he not encountered Shang Tianliang and the others who had stepped into the martial immortal realm, Chu Xiu would have no choice but to fight. He would not have bet with him. However, after Shang Tianliang reached the martial immortal realm, Chu Xiu's subordinates, from the first heaven to the fifth heaven, could be said to be complete. There were martial immortals of all levels. In fact, it could even be said that they stood at the apex of cultivators of the same level. Of course, this did not mean that the martial immortals of the Sky Luo Temple were weak. It was just that Shang Tianliang and the others were too strong. Shang Tianliang, Lu Jianghu, and Lu Fengxian had all relied on themselves to walk their own path of martial cultivation. They had encountered opportunities and slaughtered their way to their current realm. As for the heads of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple and the other pavilions, even after reaching the martial immortal realm, they would still walk the path of the former. Very rarely would there be a generation of martial immortals who could walk their own path and establish their own pavilions. Although there were a few in the past 10,000 years, there were none in this generation. Chu Xiu looked at Zen Master Ji Kong and said indifferently, Zen Master Ji Kong, at this stage, are you still not prepared to admit defeat? If we get serious and get injured, don't blame the Kunlun devil cult for killing us. Zen Master Ji Kong let out a long breath, put his palms together, chanted a Buddhist name, and said in a deep voice, life and death are decreed by fate. At the martial immortal realm, no one would fear death even in a real fight to the death. This is only the beginning. It's not yet time to determine victory or defeat. They had only exchanged a few blows. Even though the Sky Luo Temple's side was at a complete disadvantage, they could not just surrender. Otherwise, where would the Sky Luo Temple put its face? As they fought, the remnants of the primordial God Palace and the 10,000 Buddha Palace began to collapse, revealing some of the things buried within. The 10,000 Buddha Palace was a remnant left behind thousands of years before the great calamity of the ancient era. It was the most prosperous period of Buddhism in the Western region. At that time, although there weren't as many as 10,000 Buddhist sects in the entire Western region, there were hundreds of Buddhist sects branches, so there were at least 8,000 of them. During that era, the Buddhist sect would have a gathering every 10 years, and the gathering place was the Wanfu Palace. However, there was an internal strife in the Buddhist sect, which led to the disappearance of 90% of the Buddhist sect's branches. This also led to the rise of the Heavenly Luo Temple and the decline of the myriad Buddha Palace. However, no matter how much this place had declined, it was still the sacred ground of the Buddhist sect in the past. It was said that when the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple chose to leave the upper mortal heavens in search of a new lease of life in the Daoist continent, there were still some old monks of the 10,000 Buddha Palace who stayed behind. Buddha statues and Buddhist scriptures were revealed in the shattered palaces. Some of them were even damaged, which made Zen Master Jikong, who was watching the battle from the outside, frown slightly. As for the things that were enshrined in the main hall of the original God Palace, they were a little strange. They were all oddly shaped things. Some looked like ancient demonic gods, and some were magical objects that were pieced together. Some didn't even look like humans. Tian Hun's understanding of the original God Palace was also vague. He didn't know what was in the deepest part of the original God Palace. He only knew that the lunatics of the original God Palace must have researched something good. At the very least, it would be very useful to the current Chu Xiu. As the two groups fought, their figures involuntarily shifted towards the deepest part of the remnant. They didn't realize that a pair of eyes had already locked onto them. At that moment, in the deepest part of the remnant, two main halls were stacked together. On one side was the majestic Mahavira Hall, and on the other side was a strange palace with a circular top and a strange bottom. Halos flickered in the depths of the strange palace, and in the center of the halos floated an existence that didn't seem like a human. To be more precise, it was a strange living creature. It was 30 feet tall, like a small giant. Its body was like a human's, but it had a tail that was as long as an arm. Every bit of its skin and flesh shone with a golden light, as if it had been chiseled by a knife. It could be said to be perfect. It had 4 arms, and its face was shrouded in light, so it couldn't be seen clearly. One could only vaguely see 1 black and 1 white, and 2 eyes without pupils. At the same time, there were 2 curved half-moon horns on its head, 1 black and 1 white. However, at that moment, its 4 arms and legs were shackled by bronze chains. The chains were engraved with runes that suppressed its power. TSK, as expected of the perfect living creature created by the original God Palace in the past. Every bit of its existence was created according to the power of this world. If the original God Palace had truly created you, they might have really created a god. Standing in front of the strange living creature was a monk. He was a burly monk, but his face was pale and distorted. His broken body was pieced together by bone spurs, and his eyes were glowing red. His appearance was almost identical to the 3 existences from 500 years ago that Chu Xiu had seen in the dragon's vein in the past. However, compared to them, this monk seemed to have a great sense of autonomy. He could speak and communicate freely, unlike the other 3, who even had difficulty speaking. Perfect? The heavenly way is flawed, and it isn't a perfect existence. How can I be perfect? Moreover, the people of the original God Palace aren't gods themselves, so how can they create gods? They aren't gods, and they don't understand gods. Humans can't create existences that they don't understand. This is a paradox. The strange living creature's voice didn't sound like a man's or a woman's gender. The monk shook his head and said, "Humans can't create gods, but you can become a god yourself. In the past 10,000 years, you have read all the ancient books of the original God Palace. Don't you want to go out? A perfect living creature like you is unique in this world. Your cultivation speed is tremendous. As long as you are given a chance, you will mend yourself to the point of perfection and become a real god." The strange living creature gazed at the monk calmly with its black and white eyes. The ancient books of the original God Palace taught me many things. For example, if you want something, you must first give it. I want to go out, but I want to know the price you have to pay for letting me out. What you will get will definitely be more than what I got. The monk sighed and said, "You aren't a human. Why do you need to read the writings of so many people? The human heart is sinister. It will only make you filthy and further away from being a god. I feel that you are scolding me." The monk's slightly ferocious face stiffened. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Since you want to use the human way to talk, it's even simpler. I am here on behalf of my master. I can let you go. The price is 2 things. One is that when my master returns to this world, you have to stand on his side and clear the obstacles for him. The second thing is your 3rd eye." The glabella of the strange living creature flickered. A slit opened and a vertical eye peeked out. The vertical eye didn't have a pupil. Black and white intertwined like chaos. It was very strange. The strange living creature shook its head and said, "I can promise you the first thing, but not the second. One eye can look at the sky and the other eye can look into the netherworld. Only my 3rd eye is the eye that controls the balance of yin and yang. The 3rd eye is the most perfect state. You said that I can become a god. If I give you my 3rd eye, I will never be able to become a god." The monk shook his head and said, "Wrong, very wrong. If I'm not wrong, you still can't fuse with the 3rd eye. In the past, the original God Palace created this perfect 3rd eye and wanted to let you fuse with it. In the end, even after the original God Palace was destroyed, they didn't succeed. If you can fuse with the 3rd eye, why did you hide it for more than 10,000 years? The perfection created isn't true perfection. You need the 3rd eye, but it isn't the 3rd eye that the original God Palace gave you. It is the 3rd eye that you comprehended from the source of yin and yang. Give it to me, and I will give you freedom. Serve my master, and when he returns, he will give you true perfection and help you become a god." The strange living creature was silent for a long time and said, "You said that humans can't create gods. But my master has already surpassed the human body and controls a world. Such an existence is already above gods and Buddhas. The monk's eyes were suffused with a blood-red glow. However, it wasn't murderous intent but fanatical reverence. At this time, the sounds of Shang Tianliang and the others fighting with the people of the heavenly Luo treasure temple came from outside. The monk frowned and urged, "Quick! There isn't enough time. You should know what your identity is. The original God Palace wants to make you a god, but outsiders see you as a monster. The timing isn't right. There are already people outside fighting their way in. If they see you, you will never have the chance to escape." The strange living creature was silent for a long time. Finally, it said, "Remove my seal first. Give me the third eye first." The strange living creature shook its head and said in an unhurried and emotionless tone, "Remove my seal first." The monk was helpless. It was really difficult to communicate with such an inhuman existence. He formed seals with both hands and Buddhist light burst out, quickly dissolving the sealing formation runes on the chains from the outside. When all the bronze chains were dissolved, the strange living creature's body emitted rays of light. Its aura continued to rise. Just by looking at its aura, it had the might of a sixth or seventh heavens martial immortal. After removing the seal, it didn't go back on its words. It formed seals with both hands and the third eye on its forehead slowly stretched out. There were even traces of blood lines on it. The strange living creature stretched out its hand and severed the bloodlines. Just as it was about to sever all the bloodlines, the hall was smashed into pieces. Lu Jianghu, who originally had the upper hand, mocked Monk Ji Sheng and angered the other party. He burned his blood essence and attacked with all his might, sending Lu Jianghu into the deepest part of the hall. Lu Jianghu coughed and crawled up while cursing. He coincidentally saw the monk in front of him. He was stunned at first, then as if he had seen a ghost, he suddenly shouted, "Monk Long Tu! How could it be you? You were clearly stabbed by the heartless demon Venerable. How could you still be alive? Did you become a zombie?" Chapter 1406. Lu Jianghu's sudden appearance made the entire scene awkward. The monk named Longtu's expression suddenly changed, and he shouted at the strange creature, "There's no time. Give me the third eye." Chu Xiu had already discovered them when the strange creature had completely separated the third eye on its forehead. Chu Xiu had never expected that Dugu Weiwei's life spirit would be so deep in the netherworld heaven. Not only had he infiltrated the dragon vein of the three kingdoms, but he had also sent people to infiltrate this secret realm from 10,000 years ago. The moment the strange creature's third eye appeared, the yin and yang origin in Chu Xiu's body throbbed. Immediately, Chu Xiu knew that Tianhun wanted him to take the third eye. Although the strange creature itself was a precious treasure that had been meticulously carved, it was still a creature that had developed spiritual intelligence. Chu Xiu could not possibly stew it in a pot, could he? The third eye was the last link that the original divine palace had constructed to create a perfect creature. It was an extremely perfect existence. Monk Longtu's figure turned into a golden light and grabbed at the third eye. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu had already taken a step forward and appeared in that space in an instant. Zen Master Ji Kong, who was standing at the side, was stunned when he saw Chu Xiu enter so anxiously. He shouted behind Chu Xiu, "Cult Master Chu, what is going on here? Why did someone appear in that secret realm?" How could Chu Xiu be in the mood to reply to Zen Master Ji Kong? He had already slashed out with the breaking formation blade in his hand. The powerful blade light directly traversed the entire ruins, separating everything. At the same time, it completely separated the third eye from Monk Longtu. However, when Chu Xiu grabbed at the third eye, the two horns on the strange creature's head suddenly emitted a black and white light. Extreme yin and yang power surged toward Chu Xiu and completely enveloped Chu Xiu. "It is not something that belongs to you," Chu Xiu said faintly, "but it also doesn't belong to you. You are an existence created by the original divine palace. Do you really belong to you?" Chu Xiu's words seemed to have provoked the strange god, causing him, who had always been calm, to suddenly become irritable and angry. Of course it belongs to me. The original God Palace wants to create a god, and I am their perfect god. I am the original god. A god who stands above men. Monk Longtu hurriedly shouted, "That's right. You are the original god, the only true god in this world. Don't let him obtain the third eye. Snatch it away." Noisy. Chu Xiu snorted coldly and said to Lu Jianghe and the others, "Let's deal with them first." Although Lu Jianghe didn't know what was going on, he looked at Monk Longtu and laughed coldly. "Monk Longtu, I haven't seen you for 500 years. I haven't forgotten how you bullied me back then. Back when I was making a living on Lini River, you were the one who brought people to find trouble with me. Now, regardless of whether you have come back to life or not, I will kill you again." Monk Longtu looked at Lu Jianghe and was puzzled. He frowned and asked, "Who are you? You don't even remember who I am?" Lu Jianghe felt humiliated when he heard this. Back then, he didn't have a sense of existence, and no one remembered him. In a rage, Lu Jianghe turned into a sea of blood and charged at Monk Longtu. But in the next moment, Monk Longtu formed a Vajra seal and an incomparably vast Buddhist light smashed down. Lu Jianghe was blasted back by the Buddhist seal, and a lot of his qi and blood evaporated. The strength that Monk Longtu displayed was comparable to a fifth heaven martial immortal. Right now, Lu Jianghe and the others were indeed no match for him. "Attack together." Lu Jianghe called out. Shang Tianliang, Lu Fengxian, and the others went up to attack Monk Longtu. The people of the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple were stunned and didn't know what to do. Originally, they were engaged in an intense battle with Chu Xiu's subordinates. However, as they were fighting, two more people appeared in the ruins. Or a man and a monster who called himself a god. Xuyin's expression suddenly changed and he said softly, "Ancestral Master." "How can it be Ancestral Master?" Zen Master Ji Kong frowned. "Who do you think that monk is?" "Your Ancestral Master?" Xuyin nodded with an ugly expression. "If I'm not mistaken, he's the abbot of the Great Light Temple from 500 years ago, the reincarnated Vajra, Venerable Longtu. He's the only person in the history of the Great Light Temple who joined the Great Light Temple halfway through and became the abbot in the end. But he should have died 500 years ago by the hands of the heartless demon Exalt, one of the 4 demon exalts under the Kunlun devil cult. How is he still alive?" Xuyin felt that Monk Longtu looked familiar, but because Monk Longtu was a person from 500 years ago, and Xuyin didn't really care about the history of 500 years ago, he only saw Venerable Longtu's portrait and deeds in the scripture pavilion when he was young, so he didn't recognize him. But just now, when Monk Longtu used the Vajra seal to send Lu Jianghe flying, Xuyin was certain of his identity. In the entire history of the Great Light Temple, only Monk Longtu could evolve a basic martial technique like the Vajra seal to the acme of perfection. Ji Kong frowned and said, "How can someone who died 500 years ago be resurrected? Unless he didn't die 500 years ago, and his body, primordial spirit, and true spirit were preserved and sealed." Xuyin shook his head. "That's impossible. The Great Light Temple saw him being killed with our own eyes. His primordial spirit dissipated, and his body was cremated by the ancestors of the Great Light Temple. They even left behind a Saraira." Hearing Xuyin say this, Ji Kong hesitated. He didn't understand what was going on. At that moment, the primordial spirit obviously believed Monk Longtu's words. A crack appeared on its forehead, and countless bloodlines bloomed. It wanted to take back the third eye. However, this thing was the key to Chu Xiu's breakthrough. Even if it was a real god, Chu Xiu would still dare to take it by force, let alone a man-made fake god. The 6 Saha mystical wheels appeared and enveloped the primordial spirit and the third eye. The 6 forces attacked separately, trying to trap the primordial spirit and take the third eye. More than 10,000 years ago, the primordial spirit had been sealed when it was first created. The primordial god palace had also been destroyed because it had triggered some kind of taboo. Therefore, the primordial spirit had never experienced battle. However, it was a perfect creature created by gathering all the power of the primordial god palace. Its talent for battle had been imprinted in its bones. It didn't need cultivation techniques or weapons. Its body was the most powerful existence. The two horns on the primordial spirit's head had yin and yang qi twirling around its body. The primordial spirit's body suddenly shot toward Chu Xiu. Its speed was so fast that it broke the sound barrier in an instant. It also used its body's strength to break through the blockade of the 6 Saha mystical wheels. It decisively chose not to fight for the third eye. Instead, it wanted to kill Chu Xiu first. Then, it would naturally be able to get the third eye. This choice of battle talent was amazing. It was a choice made subconsciously. However, it was a pity that sometimes this choice was not the right one. Many people sometimes had the illusion that they could win. Although the primordial spirit was known as a perfect creature, it wasn't truly perfect. Choosing Chu Xiu as its target was its biggest mistake. Chu Xiu used the law phenomenon of heaven and earth. With the support of the undying holy demon body, his body looked more like a demon god than the primordial spirit. With a loud explosion, the primordial spirit was blasted away. However, its body was shockingly strong. Even after taking on the punch of the law phenomenon of heaven and earth, it wasn't injured. It shook its head and rushed forward again. At the same time, the 4 arms behind its back formed fist seals. The power of the 4 extremes was evolving in the sky and on the ground. The azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. The primordial spirit stood in the middle. With its strength alone, it formed a formation. Interesting. It seems that you have learned all the cultivation techniques of the primordial god palace. It's a pity that the greatest achievement of the primordial god palace isn't their cultivation techniques. It's you. Chu Xiu didn't want to waste time with the primordial spirit. The strength displayed by the primordial spirit was equivalent to that of a 5th or 6th heaven martial immortal. However, the primordial spirit's physical body was extremely shocking. As such, the threat level was comparable to that of a 7th heaven martial immortal. Chu Xiu had combined the law phenomenon of heaven and earth and the undying holy demon body. This was the pinnacle of strength. Even if a 7th heaven martial immortal like Ji Kong were here, he would have to use all his strength to take on the attack. In the end, the primordial spirit used only its physical body to take on Chu Xiu's law phenomenon of heaven and earth. It wasn't even injured. It was only sent flying. Only God knew what method the primordial god palace had used to create such a physical body that was comparable to that of an ancient demon god. However, Chu Xiu still believed that nothing in this world was truly perfect. Even if an ancient demon god was resurrected, it would still be the same. No matter how strong the physical body was, there would always be a sharp blade that could tear it apart. Under the law phenomenon of heaven and earth, the blade that broke the formation condensed. The sharp shadow shone in mid-air and condensed into a dazzling crescent moon. The clouds parted and the moon shone brightly. This blade technique displayed the sharpness of the blade path to its pinnacle. In the past, it had slaughtered countless Daoist martial immortals. Slashing the physical body, unstoppable. When Chu Xiu displayed the starting stance of this blade technique, the primordial spirit's expression changed completely. He was a natural creation, so his spiritual senses were exceptionally sensitive. When Chu Xiu displayed the starting stance, the primordial spirit could feel the terrifying power. It was an ultimate power that could end him. Gods didn't have emotions, but the primordial spirit did. After the primordial god palace had given him true spiritual intelligence, it had wanted to make him a god. However, it had also given him human emotions. Most of the time, he appeared indifferent, but in reality, he also had human emotions. There was anger, and there was also fear. Between life and death, there was great fear. This was human instinct. The primordial spirit considered himself a god, but he couldn't avoid it. Hence, when Chu Xiu displayed the starting stance, the primordial spirit didn't have time to care about the third eye. He only had one thought in his mind. Run. Chapter 1407. Under the clear sky illuminating shadow, no one could escape or hide. They could only rely on their physical strength to resist and resist. Among all the opponents that Chu Xiu had faced before, only a handful of them could escape from the clear sky illuminating shadow. Although Jun Wuxian could resist the clear sky illuminating shadow, his body was destroyed, leaving only his primordial spirit. At this moment, under Chu Xiu's clear sky illuminating shadow, the original god felt an extremely sharp force tearing his body. It was a force that made people feel hopeless. They could only resist it, but they couldn't resist it because they couldn't find the source of that force. Although the original god's body was as strong as an ancient demogorgon's, he couldn't resist the pulling force of the clear sky illuminating shadow. His perfect body was bleeding. The original god roared angrily. The energy around him affected the rules of heaven and earth. The yin and yang energy in his eyes and the two horns on his head assimilated all the rules around him and fused them into his body. However, he still couldn't resist the power of the clear sky illuminating shadow. The original god gritted his teeth and changed his strategy. He didn't think about resisting anymore, but used this force to repair his body. The clear sky illuminating shadow tore a wound, and this force repaired it. However, it was a pity that the healing power couldn't compare to the destructive power. More and more wounds appeared on the original god's body. In the end, his entire body was covered with small wounds. His entire body was like a broken piece of porcelain, which looked extremely pitiful. At the moment the original god was ready to give up the two horns on his head and use the yin and yang qi, which was close to the origin, to repair his body, the dark clouds in the sky covered the sharp moon in the sky. The dark clouds covered the moon, and the light was restrained. It was Chu Xiu who had forcefully stopped the clear sky illuminating shadow. Of course, Chu Xiu didn't mean to let the original god go. He didn't have the fetish of protecting rare animals. However, if Chu Xiu forcefully used the clear sky reflecting shadow to the end and used all of its power, the original god's body would be torn apart. Chu Xiu would also be severely injured by the backlash of the supernatural power. Although the clear sky illuminating shadow was strong, the backlash was too strong. It was like a double-edged sword. In this situation, Lu Fengxian and the other two could only barely hold back Monk Longtu. Although Zen Master Ji Kong and the others were not their main enemies, they were definitely not friends either. Therefore, at this time, Chu Xiu must not be injured, at least not in front of them. Originally, once the clear sky illuminating shadow was cast, it could not be retracted. However, now that Chu Xiu was using the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth to cast the clear sky illuminating shadow, in addition to the great improvement in his abilities, his control over his strength had also increased. Thus, he was able to forcefully retract the clear sky illuminating shadow which he had cast halfway. After letting out a long breath and calming his body, Chu Xiu stopped using the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. He took a step forward and held the third eye in his hand. At this time, the original god was covered in wounds and blood. He didn't dare to stop Chu Xiu and could only let Chu Xiu hold the third eye in his hand. The third eye was extremely strange. The yin and yang energy and even a chaotic energy kept surging and fermenting, trying to break free from Chu Xiu. It didn't have any intelligence, but it had an instinct. It seemed like it didn't want to be controlled by any existence. In the past, when the original god palace had created it, it had been too perfect. As a result, the original god couldn't assimilate it. At this moment, the yin and yang origin in Chu Xiu's body suddenly released a faint aura. It didn't affect Chu Xiu at all, but it completely shocked the third eye, allowing it to stabilize in Chu Xiu's hand. Seeing Chu Xiu keep the third eye calmly and look at him, Monk Longtu knew that something was wrong. Chu Xiu stared at him with a faint smile and said, "You are very strange. You are different from all the others I have seen before. I have seen the Iron Emperor Castle Lord, the previous Drifting Snow City Lord of the Extreme North, and the previous Celestial Master of the Celestial Master Abode. You are different from them. You seem to have retained your consciousness. They have all turned into ashes. What about you?" 500 years ago, you died once. Are you afraid of dying a second time? Tell me, what is going on with you? What is that person from the Yellow Springs heaven planning? If you don't tell me, I will turn you into ashes like those things. Monk Longtu's expression changed. He didn't expect that Chu Xiu had already discovered all this. However, he then laughed loudly and said, "Do you think you have one?" As soon as he said this, he turned his gaze to Su Yun and said in a low voice, "You are a junior of my Great Light Temple? Looking at your strength, you are even stronger than me 500 years ago. Not bad at all. Attack now and kill them all together." Su Yun said awkwardly, "Ancestral Master, only we are disciples of the Great Light Temple. The others are martial artists of the upper world Celestial Treasure Temple. Your disciples are unworthy. Now that the Great Light Temple has been destroyed by Chu Xiu, we can only lead our remaining members to join the Celestial Treasure Temple in order to survive and inherit." When Monk Longtu heard this, he didn't seem to care about the Great Light Temple being destroyed. He said to the people of the Celestial Treasure Temple, "Since you are also people of my Buddhist sect, help me this time. I will repay you generously in the future." Ji Kong frowned and said, "Repay you generously? What I am even more curious about is who are you? The dead from 500 years ago have been resurrected. Are you still the person from 500 years ago? Or rather, who is the person behind you?" A strange smile appeared on Monk Longtu's lips. "Everyone, you will have the chance to find out who I am and who is behind me in the future. But now, are you sure you don't want to help? I know why you came to the 10,000 Buddha Palace. It is definitely not just for the books of the past. When I came to the original God Palace, I actually went to the 10,000 Buddha Palace and saw that person. I also reinforced the seal that was about to loosen. If you are willing to help me this time, I will hand the seal over to you. If you don't help me, I will let it out. By then, it will be enough to embarrass you and give you a headache." Ji Kong seemed to know what the other party was talking about. His expression changed and he shouted, "Impossible. 10,000 years have passed. How can it still be alive? Even if it is alive, does it still have intelligence?" Monk Longtu grinned. "Even the dead can be resurrected. What's so strange about that kind of existence living for 10,000 years? Moreover, it is not considered a human. As long as the evil thoughts of heaven and earth are not eliminated and the heart demon is not extinguished, it will continue to exist." Chu Xiu did not know what Longtu was talking about. However, he only knew that if he continued, Ji Kong and the others would probably be persuaded by him. Since the other party did not intend to surrender, he would forcefully capture him. Without saying a word, Chu Xiu took a step forward and rushed toward Monk Longtu. At the same time, he slashed down and an invisible blade light instantly enveloped Longtu. However, at that moment, Ji Kong suddenly made a move. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's dharmic image rose up, suppressing the surroundings and enveloping Longtu within it. The blade intent collided with the Ksitigarbha Dharma idol. In an instant, the blade energy and Buddha light scattered in all directions and even shattered the surrounding space. At the same time that he blocked Chu Xiu's attack, Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, can you give face to Heaven Luo Temple and let us deal with this person?" Chu Xiu snorted coldly. "Your Heaven Luo Temple doesn't even know what kind of existence he is, yet you still want to cause trouble." Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "It is precisely because I don't know that I am prepared to bring him back to Heaven Luo Temple to interrogate him carefully." At that moment, Monk Longtu also realized that something was wrong. He had overestimated the strength of Heaven Luo Temple's group. Facing Chu Xiu, they actually did not dare to attack and even tried to get him to give them face. Hence, Longtu secretly drew an arrayed disc in his hand. While the two of them were talking, the arrayed disc had already begun to operate. Sensing the energy fluctuations, Chu Xiu suddenly looked at Monk Longtu. He had already slashed out with the breaking array in his hand, but it was already too late. The original God Palace and the Million Buddha Palace were completely entangled. The moment Monk Longtu activated the array formation, the entire Million Buddha Palace began to shake violently. Boundless sinister demonic energy surged violently, causing the entire space within the ruins to tremble. The entire Million Buddha Palace was completely shattered. A figure shrouded in black evil devil chi stepped out of the ruins and appeared in front of everyone. It was a monk, a tall and strong young monk. His entire body was covered in black devil chi, but what he emitted was not devil chi. Instead, it was an extremely sinister ghost chi. In Chu Xiu's perception, he did not seem to have a physical body, yet he seemed to have one. The most important thing was his eyes. They were formed by countless evil thoughts. If one looked at them, it would affect the state of mind of a person who wasn't mentally strong. Compared to the existence in front of him, the original God created by humans could not be considered a human, but it was more like a human than the existence in front of him. What is this thing? Chu Xiu looked at Ji Kong. However, Zen Master Ji Kong's face was livid, and he did not say a word. Monk Longtu laughed. If you don't say it, I'll say it for you. He was the founder of the Million Buddha Palace, the first holy monk Tanzong, who was recognized by hundreds of Buddhist sects, including the Tianluo Treasure Temple, 10,000 years ago. Humans have 7 emotions: greed, anger, obsession, hate, love, evil, and desire. There are also 8 sufferings: birth, aging, illness, death, separation from love, long-lasting resentment, unattainable desires, and inability to let go. In the past, Tanzong claimed to have cut off all his desires and became the first holy monk that no one has ever done. He even helped countless monks, including the patriarch of the Tianluo Treasure Temple, to get rid of evil thoughts and calm their minds. However, how could the so-called evil thoughts and desires be so easily eradicated? Tanzong had only cut off a part of his primordial spirit and cultivated it into an independent primordial spirit to carry his evil thoughts and desires. This part of the primordial spirit had even absorbed the evil thoughts and emotions of countless Buddhist monks. After Tanzong died, he replaced Tanzong and became a devil that gathered countless evil thoughts. 10,000 years ago, after Tanzong died, he was released. That was equivalent to the arrival of a great calamity, and the entire martial world was littered with corpses. Now, his power has not fully recovered, so you guys have to be careful. If you let him go out and cause trouble in the martial world again, it will be the karma of your Tianluo Treasure Temple. Chapter 1408. Tanzong was already dead, but this evil thought was formed from Tanzong's primordial spirit. Everything was caused by him, so it wasn't strange that it was him. And most importantly, Tanzong clearly knew that if he died, he wouldn't be able to suppress the evil thoughts that had already taken shape. The other party would definitely bring chaos to the entire pugilistic world. In the end, he didn't say anything to anyone. This #1 holy monk in the history of 10,000 years ago was the standard. After I die, who cares if the flood overflows the sky? Maybe even at the very last moment, his evil thought wasn't completely eradicated. Ji Kong's face was completely black. They knew about Tanzong's evil thought. This time, they chose to find the 1000 Buddha Palace. One of the reasons was naturally to find the scriptures inside, but at the same time, they wanted to seal Tanzong's evil thought again. The Buddhist lineage valued karma the most. In the past, their heavenly Luo treasure temple had a deep relationship with Tanzong. The one who sealed Tanzong's evil thought was also the heavenly Luo treasure temple. Later on, the entire heavenly Luo treasure temple left the lower realm and came to the Daoist continent. But now that they were back, if they didn't do anything and allowed Tanzong's evil thought to bring chaos to the world, then all the karma would be on heavenly Luo treasure temple. Also, Tanzong's evil thought wasn't just a mindless ghost. The other party's foundation was part of Tanzong's primordial spirit. He naturally knew who took the lead to seal him for 10,000 years. At this moment, he had just broken free and felt the aura of the heavenly Luo treasure temple martial artist. That endless evil thought was already staring at them. Lanta pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "Stop him as well. My master promised that as long as you are willing to submit, he will repair the part of your primordial spirit you lost. Of course, we have to wait until he returns. Tan Zong's evil thought looked at Lantu. He didn't open his mouth, but his thunderous voice resounded throughout the world. If you lie to me, I will make sure you won't even be able to die. Lanta said indifferently, my master is a man of his word. He won't lie to you. You aren't qualified for him to lie to you. With that, the evil spirit of Tan Zong suddenly turned his gaze towards Chu Xiu and Ji Kong. He opened his mouth and let out an angry roar. In an instant, endless evil spirit energy filled the entire space and shrouded them. Tan Zong's evil will actually displayed the strength of the 8th heavenly layer. Even though he had been sealed for 10,000 years, he could still display the cultivation of the 8th heavenly layer. On Longtu's side, he waved his hand and brought along the original spirit that was heavily injured by the clear sky reflecting shadow. They escaped through the crack that Tan Sek's evil intent had opened. Chu Xiu didn't waste any effort to chase after him because he couldn't catch up with him anymore. In the face of an opponent with the strength of the 8th layer, the opponent would not give him this opportunity. Chu Xiu said to Jikong expressionlessly, Master Jikong, are you satisfied now? If you didn't stop me just now and let me capture him, how could there be so many problems now? Jikong retorted, I also want to capture the other party. Anyway, I'm going to capture him, so it doesn't matter who makes the move. You insist on fighting with me, could it be that you have some shameful secret? The two of them exchanged a few words, then didn't continue speaking and faced Tan Zong's evil will. This thing had locked onto all of them at the same time, and even enveloped the entire area of the ruins within its range of power. This power was simply terrifying. Tan Zong's evil will formed a Buddhist seal, but attentive people would have already noticed that every seal he formed was in the opposite direction. In the next moment, a Vairocana Dharma that was burning with pitch-black flames appeared behind him. To be more accurate, it wasn't Vairocana, but Vairocana Dharma. The Dharma's dignified face was now filled with malevolence. Thousands of arms appeared behind the Dharma's back and smashed towards the people below. That power contained the extremely powerful power of nirvanic destruction, as if all the emotions in the world were fused within it. Although Chu Xiu also cultivated the demonic path, the power of Tan Zong's evil will wasn't considered demonic, but pure evil, a type of evil that was displayed to the extreme. Stand behind me! Chu Xiu shouted at Lu Fengxian and the others. When facing Longtu, they could still hold him back if they worked together. But facing this Tan Zong's evil will, which was comparable to the 8th celestial layer, Lu Fengxian, who had just stepped into the martial immortal realm, would be heavily injured if she took one of its attacks. Forming the lotus cross seal, endless light blossomed in front of Chu Xiu, shattering the Vairocana Dharma's arms one by one. However, at the same time, he had to endure the powerful attacks. Zen Master Ji Kong also raised his Ksitigarbha Dharma to the peak, helping the disciples of the Heaven Luo Treasure Temple. Actually, with their strength, it was a simple matter for them to escape from the enemy's hands. However, they had disciples on the side. How could they abandon them and escape by themselves? Zen Master Ji Kong gritted his teeth and said to Chu Xiu, Official Chu, at a time like this, let's not complain about whose fault it is. What's important is to first get rid of this Tan Zong's evil will. You haven't used up the blade you used to kill the primordial god, right? I know that after you use that blade, it will cause a powerful backlash. After you use it, I will protect you. I swear to Buddha that I won't hit you when you're down. If I have any evil thoughts, I am willing to fall into samsara forever and never be able to transcend. Ordinary monks rarely made such a vow because it would affect their state of mind and the karma that existed in the unseen world. Now that Zen Master Ji Kong said this, it seemed like he was sincere about cooperating with Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu spread his hands and said helplessly, even if I use clear sky reflecting shadow, it's futile. If I'm not wrong, this Tan Zong's evil will doesn't have a physical body. His current state should be a kind of primordial spirit body. It's a kind of power formed by countless evil thoughts eroding the primordial spirit. Don't care what this power is, it doesn't have a physical body anyway. Clear sky reflecting shadow can only cut the physical body, it's not lethal to the primordial spirit. After one blade, I'll be crippled, but he probably won't be affected much. At this moment, the Tanzong's evil will began to recite scriptures, but it was the kind that no one could understand. Every word that came out would make everyone's heart tremble and feel very stifled. As the scriptures were recited, all the rules in the ruins were repelled, as if it had become a world that belonged to him alone. Ji Kong's expression changed. The power of the Tanzong's evil will doesn't come from his body, but from his power. It's the extreme negative emotions of heaven and earth. It can even infect the world and repel the rules. If it's used on a person, it can even completely destroy their state of mind. If this continues, when this world completely becomes his, none of us will be able to leave. Seeing that Chu Xiu didn't seem to be in a hurry and didn't make any movements, Ji Kong couldn't care so much anymore. He didn't know if Chu Xiu was telling the truth when he said that clear sky reflecting shadow was useless, but in this situation, if Chu Xiu wasn't going to risk his life, then he would have to. Ji Kong sighed and took a step forward. The golden Buddhist light around him started to dissipate. At the same time, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Dharma idol behind him also started to recite the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Dharma idol. Traces of Buddhist light were emitted from the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Dharma idol. In the end, it was as if the entire Dharma idol was burning. The Ksitigarbha Dharma idol became smaller and smaller, and the burning became more and more intense. In the end, it even lit up the entire space, completely suppressing the power of the Tanzong's evil will to a radius of 10 meters around him. Until hell is empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was a powerful existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with Buddha. Zen Master Ji Kong cultivated in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Perhaps he didn't show it normally, but at this moment, when he used his full strength, the powerful might shook the netherworld. The majestic Buddhist light suppressed the Tanzong's evil will and propped up a bright place in the dark night. The Tanzong's evil will looked at Ji Kong with a sinister smile. Heaven Luo Treasure Temple, Ksitigarbha Pavilion? Back then, the head of your Ksitigarbha Pavilion had his neck twisted by me. Until hell is empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. If you can't even become a Buddha, what's the point of saying all that nonsense? As the Tanzong's evil will's voice fell, countless black gas surrounded him and condensed into a huge swastika. However, it was an inverted swastika, emitting the most evil negative energy in the world. The inverted swastika suppressed the Ksitigarbha golden light. To be precise, this wasn't suppression, but a kind of assimilation. The Tanzong's evil will's power came from the heaven and earth. In fact, it was a kind of negative energy gathered by all living beings in this world. As long as the evil will existed in this world, the Tanzong's evil will's power wouldn't be extinguished. Even his body wasn't indestructible. Therefore, the Ksitigarbha golden light was slowly being eroded and assimilated. One side was getting stronger and the other side was getting weaker. Against an enemy like the Tanzong's evil will, the most taboo thing was to get entangled in a fight. At this moment, Chu Xiu finally made his move. If they didn't get rid of this thing, none of them would be able to leave. His hands formed a seal and the power of creation activated the yin and yang in his body. In an instant, the majestic yin and yang energy filled Chu Xiu's body, causing him to groan. At this moment, Chu Xiu's body had already turned into yin and yang. As he clasped his hands together, yang was above and yin was below. He clasped his hands together and twisted. The yin and yang energy combined and affected the entire heaven and earth. In an instant, heaven and earth became one and intertwined. It was like a huge millstone, completely crushing everything and recreating the chaos. Heaven and earth millstone. This move required Chu Xiu to draw upon the origin energy within his body in order to execute it, and he had only used it once when he faced Yi Weikong in the past. After using the clear sky illuminating shadow, Chu Xiu could roughly estimate the strength of the backlash. However, Chu Xiu wasn't sure how strong the backlash would be after using the heaven and earth millstone. Therefore, from then on, Chu Xiu hadn't used it even once. This time, against the Tanzong's evil will, even the clear sky illuminating shadow was useless. Therefore, Chu Xiu could only use the heaven and earth millstone. It didn't matter if it was a positive or negative energy. Everything, including the ruins, the original God Palace, the Thousand Buddha Palace, and the small world that contained the ruins, was directly crushed by Chu Xiu's heaven and earth millstone. Chapter 1409. The clear sky illuminating shadow could not slash the body of an essence spirit, but the worldly millstone could crush any existence between heaven and earth. When Ji Kong saw Chu Xiu's worldly millstone, his eyes were filled with deep fear and even a trace of fear. Although the precious Buddha of heaven and earth had worked together with Chu Xiu in the Daoist Ocean, they had acted separately, so they had not truly seen Chu Xiu's strength. Ji Kong had interacted with Chu Xiu many times. Ever since the establishment of the Kunlun devil cult, he had been in contact with Chu Xiu. Every time Chu Xiu revealed his battle prowess, he would be incomparably horrified. When the worldly millstone was used, Ji Kong only had one thought. If he were to face this move, he would probably be killed on the spot. The small world that the ruins were in directly exploded. The powerful force even made Chu Xiu, who had used the worldly millstone, a little unsteady. Retreat! Chu Xiu shouted in a low voice. LV Fengxian immediately pulled Chu Xiu, who had exhausted all of his strength, and followed the others to escape from this destroyed world. This time, it was much better to use the worldly millstone than when he had used it against Yi Weikong. At the very least, Chu Xiu hadn't been seriously injured by the backlash this time. He had only exhausted his strength. Of course, if he could control the source of the yin and yang forces more precisely, he might be able to save some power and not let it all pour out. The power brought about by the destruction of the small world took a full hour to completely dissipate. Zen Master Ji Kong had also escaped with the people from the precious Buddha of heaven and earth. He let out a long breath and asked, "Where's the Tan sect's evil intent? Is he dead?" Chu Xiu shook his head. "I don't know. He can no longer be considered human, so I can't feel his vitality. He might be dead, he might still be alive, or he might be alive in a different state." Zen Master Ji Kong looked at the destroyed pocket world and couldn't help but smile bitterly. He was somewhat at a loss. They were here to search for some ancient records left behind in the Thousand Buddha Palace, as well as to reinforce the seal on Tan sect's evil thoughts. In the end, the evil thoughts of Tan's sect were released and the 10,000 Buddha Palace was completely destroyed. The Tian Luo treasure Dharma's mission this time was simply executed in pieces by him. The root of all this was not Chu Xiu, but Venerable Longtu from 500 years ago. Ji Kong didn't know what was going on. He could only ask Chu Xiu. His intuition told him that Chu Xiu definitely knew the truth. "Cult Master Chu, it's already come to this. Aren't you going to tell us what's going on with Monk Lantu?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "If I knew what was going on, would I have brought so few people and been caught off guard? If I knew what was going on, I would have brought all my subordinates and sealed the entire pocket world. Who cares if it's an original god or Tan sect's evil thoughts, no one would be able to escape." Zen Master Ji Kong, there are some things that you should know, and it's useless to force what you shouldn't know. I've used up too much energy, so I'm going back to recuperate. Of course, if Zen Master Ji Kong is interested, I'm willing to fight with you again. After saying that, Chu Xiu left with his people. Zen Master Ji Kong was stunned, but in the end, he just sighed and didn't say anything. Just now, he used Ksitigarbha's Light of Buddha to resist the attack of Tan sect's evil thoughts. He had also used up a lot of energy. Moreover, his subordinates weren't as strong as the experts from the Kunlun devil cult under Chu Xiu. He couldn't beat them, so he could only give up. "Let's go. We should also return to Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple and tell Chief Ji Shan about this matter." When Ji Kong returned with his people, he didn't notice that Su Yun's body suddenly paused. His eyes were instantly filled with darkness, but in the next moment, it disappeared. He followed Ji Kong back to Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple like a normal person. Ji Kong and the others returned empty-handed, but Chu Xiu didn't return empty-handed. At least, the third eye made by the original God Palace was in his hands. After returning to the southern sub-palace, Chu Xiu had been studying this thing. From the outside, this so-called third eye was like a gem that contained the power of yin and yang. It also contained a trace of chaotic force. However, the power was too pure. Chu Xiu didn't know how to refine it because he couldn't absorb it at all. Previously, the original god put this thing between his eyebrows, but it didn't seem to be refined. It was just hidden in his flesh. Chu Xiu knocked his head and suddenly had a bold idea. People without strength having bold ideas were called courting death. People with strength had the courage to try. Chu Xiu felt that he belonged to the latter group. In the seclusion's secret room, Chu Xiu directly used the power of creation to trigger the yin and yang in his body and condensed it in his hands. This power was so huge that it was enough to display the earth-shattering magical power like the world millstone, but now it was held in Chu Xiu's hands. It was equivalent to holding two storms that could completely destroy the entire southern man sub-palace. The two groups of yin and yang origin poured into the third eye. In an instant, the third eye bloomed with a dazzling brilliance. The brilliance was divided into two colors, yin and yang. Under the blessing of the yin and yang origin power, it integrated into Chu Xiu's body. In the middle of Chu Xiu's eyebrows, there was a mark that looked like a vertical eye. The yin and yang power overflowed into the surrounding seclusion secret room. Everything it touched, including the array and the walls, turned into flying ashes. This noise alarmed the others. Everyone went out to take a look and saw Chu Xiu's current appearance. Although they didn't know what was going on, they guessed that Chu Xiu had a breakthrough again. Jianghu saw that Chu Xiu had 3 eyes on his head and that his whole body was dyed black and white by the yin and yang power. He couldn't help but say, 3 eyes? A yin-yang person? Mei Qinglian looked at Jianghu and shook her head. You better hope that cult master Chu didn't hear it. Chu Xiu heard Jianghu's habitual mouth. However, he didn't have the time to argue with him now. This third eye was really magical. No wonder the original God Palace regarded it as the last link to create a god. This thing could be said to be perfect. It was so perfect that it didn't seem like it was created by a human. The third eye contained a portion of the yin and yang origin power. This wasn't a big deal. Other than the true yang origin and devil origin, some people who cultivated a martial path to the peak realm or found other treasures could also obtain a portion of the power that was close to the origin power. However, the origin power in the third eye could be said to be perfectly balanced. It was exactly the same as the yin and yang origin in Chu Xiu's body. Therefore, human flesh and blood couldn't refine this thing because it was too perfect. Chu Xiu didn't refine the third eye either. To be more precise, it was the yin and yang origin power that refined it. When the yin and yang light gradually disappeared, Chu Xiu had already stepped into the realm of the 6th level of the celestial realm. Of course, this wasn't what made Chu Xiu the happiest. What he should be happy about was that with this third eye, Chu Xiu could use a portion of the yin and yang origin power. It wouldn't be like when he used the heaven and earth millstone, where he always had to worry about not being able to control the power and suffering a backlash. Congratulations on your great improvement in strength. Jianghu hurriedly rushed to be the first to flatter him. The others also congratulated him, but they didn't have much passion. Of course, it wasn't because they didn't respect Chu Xiu. It was because Chu Xiu broke through so frequently that they were used to it. On the contrary, if one day Chu Xiu was stuck in a realm for years or even decades without breaking through, then they would be worried that something had happened to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "All right, now isn't the time to congratulate me. I'm afraid the situation in the pugilistic world is going to change again. The Daoist lower realm isn't the beginning of a new era, it's now." Previously, the Daoist people always talked about the era of great battles and things like a new era. Although Chu Xiu had already been involved in a part of the battle for fate, he thought that it was only referring to the lower realm of the Daoist sects. Moreover, it was all caused by him. However, from the looks of it now, the so-called new era wasn't that simple. How long had the supreme heavenly devil, the primordial spirit, and the Tan sect's evil thoughts been buried in the lower realm? With Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji's strength, they might have been able to sense it. They didn't dig it up because there was no need. However, they hadn't been discovered for 10,000 years. They only appeared after the Daoist lower realm. This couldn't be described as a coincidence. It could only be said that it was an arrangement of karma and fate. If they did it once or twice, they would be able to do it again. Who knew what would appear next? Chu Xiu was wary of such an unknown existence. At the same time, he decided to take the initiative and go to the Daoist to look for the heavenly soul. The items in the original God Palace were useful to Chu Xiu. However, the items that were useless to him might be useful to others. Hence, he took the initiative to dig them up. He might even be able to exchange them for some good items. Furthermore, the arrangement of the life soul and the netherworld heaven made Chu Xiu wary. Not only were they stealing the power of the dragon vein, but they had also made arrangements in the entire lower realm. If the heavenly soul knew where the hidden items in the lower realm were, the life soul would definitely know where they were. Although Chu Xiu didn't know what the life soul was planning, as long as he destroyed the life soul's plan and didn't let the life soul get what it wanted, it would be fine. Just as Chu Xiu was heading to the Daoist lower realm, Suyun was sitting cross-legged in a large hall in the Heaven Luo treasure temple. The surrounding lights were all extinguished. But at this time, his body was not surrounded by Buddhist light, but by layers of black qi. The black gas spiraled and finally formed a human figure that appeared in front of Suyun. It was the appearance of Tan Zong's evil thought. However, his figure was extremely blurry. Suyun looked at Tan Zong's evil thought and said coldly, "What exactly do you want?" Tan Zong's evil thought laughed softly. His voice was extremely strange. "You're wrong. It's not what I want, but what you want. If you don't want it, why didn't you tell the monks in the Heaven Luo treasure temple when I possessed you? The evil thoughts in your body are the strongest among all the Buddhist monks I've seen. You and I are the same kind of people." Chapter 14:10. Suyun knew what kind of existence Tan Zong's evil spirit was. He was definitely not someone easy to deal with. It could even be said that in the past, such an existence would have been completely sealed by the Great Light Temple. They definitely could not let him go out and harm people. But now, Suyun was sitting face to face with him to discuss cooperation. This was quite ironic. But Suyun had no choice. After he joined the Heaven Luo treasure temple, he understood how powerful Chu Xiu's power was in the Daoist. Although the Heaven Luo treasure temple valued them, it would definitely not fight to the death with Chu Xiu for them. To put it bluntly, they were not that important. From Suyun's point of view, Rama had already died once, so his drive had been worn away. He only cared about cultivating in peace in the Heaven Luo treasure temple and forgot about the hatred of destroying his sect. But Rama could forget this, but Suyun could not. Since the Heaven Luo treasure temple, the ancestral land of the Buddhist sect, could not help him, then he would seek help from the demons. For this, he would not hesitate to completely fall into the wrong path. So when Tan Zong's evil spirit's true spirit attached itself to him, Suyun did not resist and even helped Tan Zong's evil spirit hide. Suyun let out a long breath and said in a low voice, "Tell me, what do you want?" Tan Zong's evil spirit had a smile that was not a smile on his face. He said, "It's not what I want, but what you want. What the Buddha can't give you, I can. But the difference is that in front of Buddha, you only need to burn incense and chant scriptures. But in front of me, you need to pay a lot. I am fair. You can get 1 point for what you give. So what do you want and what can you give?" "I can give everything I have," Suyun said faintly. He had read scriptures and cultivated martial arts all his life. Of course, he knew what kind of state he was in. He had been possessed. It was not chi deviation, but he had fallen into the demons of his heart. Even if he killed Chu Xiu now, his Buddhist heart would be destroyed. He would not be able to become the Su Yun of the past again in this life. So, what else could he not give? Very good. Yin and Yang triumphed over evil, good and evil. Without evil, how could there be good? Don't worry so much. Whatever the heavenly Luo treasure Dharma can't give you, I can. As soon as Tan Zong's evil will finished speaking, his entire body completely fused into Su Yun's body. It wasn't as simple as merging with Void Cloud. Instead, it was as if he had become one with Void Cloud. In the Daoist divine cloud realm, Tianhun was surprised to see Chu Xiu come again. Why are you here again? Have you gotten the item in the original God Palace? Chu Xiu nodded and said, not only did we get it, but we also found something. It was unknown what the life soul had done to those experts who had been resurrected 500 years ago, but it had actually sent them directly to the ruins. I've discovered one such existence, but who knows how many of them there are in the Jianghu. What is he trying to do? Tianhun frowned slightly and murmured, he's almost there. Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, what do you mean by almost there? Tianhun coughed and said, I mean he's moving too fast. If we're not faster, when Dugu Weiwei really descends, neither of us will be able to escape the fate of being devoured. So, I came here today to find out if there's a place in the mortal world where the mystery land of Taoism is hidden. Tianhun asked doubtfully, are you interested in the things of Taoism? I advise you not to waste time. The Three Pristines Temple was already a unified Taoism existence before the great calamity of antiquity times. Even in the entire Jianghu, there isn't a Taoism force that can be on equal footing with the Three Pristines Temple. So, when the Three Pristines Temple came to the Daoist, they took the most comprehensive things and basically left nothing behind. Moreover, even if you get it, it's useless. Your martial arts are too different from Taoism's martial arts. If you're asked to be like the warriors of Taoism, comprehending the Tao for 10 or 100 years, just for a moment of enlightenment and breaking through the barrier of the limit, can you do it? Some of Taoism's martial arts are good for laying a foundation, but if you really cultivate it, it's too much of a test of your state of mind. Although Chu Xiu's martial arts were both Taoist, Buddhist, and demon, when it came to Taoism, they were basically the basic type of martial arts. Although the origin of Yin and Yang was related to Taoism, it was described in every martial arts. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, I'm not going for Taoism's martial arts. I'm going to get something to trade with the Three Pristines Temple. When the Three Pristines Temple left the mortal world, no matter how comprehensive the things they brought when they left, the headquarters can't move everything to the Daoist, right? Tianhun pondered for a moment and said, if that's the case, I really think of a place. That place is related to Taoism, but it has nothing to do with the Three Pristines Temple. That place is called the Myriad Dao Palace. It was built by the Taoism forces that were hostile to the Three Pristines Temple in the past. The Three Pristines Temple and the hostile forces in Taoism? Why can't the Three Pristines Temple have one? Tianhun asked back, although the Three Pristines Temple is strong enough to unify the Dao sect, there are many inheritances in the Dao sect. Some people admit the Three Pristines Temple's orthodoxy and status, and some people don't. In the past, when the Three Pristines Temple went to the Daoist, they probably didn't bring the inheritors of the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace with them, and even used some kind of method to make the entire Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace be at the center of the great calamity. Now, there should still be some ruins left in the small world, and there should be a lot of good things. Although the Three Pristines Temple and the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace are enemies, they are both from the Dao sect. The Three Pristines Temple definitely doesn't have the inheritance of the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace. Then where should the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace be? It should be in the West Chu. There are some records of this place in Mount Longhu. In the past, the group of Taoists in Mount Longhu wanted to dig out the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace, but in the end, they dug out the wrong place and dug out some evil things that were sealed by the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace, causing many people to die. When Tianhun said this, there was a sense of schadenfreude. Perhaps in the past, this was how Dugu Weiwei looked at the Taoist master's mansion, with a feeling that everyone was drunk, but he was the only sober one. He knew, but he didn't want to tell you, and watched you suffer. After getting some information about the approximate location of the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace from Tianhun, Chu Xiu left the spirit cloud realm. Tianhun looked at Chu Xiu's back and frowned deeply. Soon again. This place is soon, and the netherworld heaven is also soon. But then he relaxed and murmured, but it's good that it's soon. As long as the result doesn't change, that day won't be far away. The Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace was in West Chu. This was actually a bit difficult because Chu Xiu didn't have much power in West Chu, and the Three Pristines Temple was originally in West Chu. If he wanted to get something, he had to trade with the Three Pristines Temple. If it turned into a fight, it wouldn't be worth it. Fortunately, Chu Xiu still had some connections in West Chu, such as the moon-worshipping cult and the Taoist master's mansion. In a hall in West Chu's imperial city, Chu Xiu first found Meng Yunsheng and sent invitations to the moon-worshipping cult and the Taoist master's mansion in the name of West Chu's imperial family. He also attached his name and invited the old Taoist master and Yi Xiaonan to come. Only the current Chu Xiu had the qualifications to invite Yi Xiaonan and the old Taoist master at the same time. If it was someone else, even Meng Yunsheng, the West Chu emperor, wouldn't have this kind of power. Cult Master Yi, long time no see. Your cultivation has improved again. Chu Xiu greeted with a smile. Yi Xiaonan nodded and said, my improvement is great, but not as fast as yours. Dong Wang Tai, who was standing behind Yi Xiaonan, twitched his mouth. His cult master's reply truly made him feel a bit helpless. When someone praised him, one would naturally have to respond humbly. Yet, Yi Xiaonan was so direct. Fortunately, Chu Xiu also knew Yi Xiaonan's personality, so there was no need for him to speak so much nonsense. The old Taoist master shook his head helplessly and said, I say, you two are outstanding figures of the lower realms. Even when compared to the experts of the peak Daoist sects, you are not inferior in the slightest. Everyone knows this. So, can I trouble the two of you to not flatter each other in front of an old man like me who has one foot in the grave? This really makes this old man's heart ache. Chu Xiu smiled and said, Old Taoist master, if you have one foot in the grave, then over half of the cultivators in the Jianghu can prepare to die. The third heavenly layer of martial immortal is not your limit. The path of martial cultivation is endless. I'm afraid even you don't think this is your limit, right? The old Taoist master only chuckled dryly and didn't say much. The most senior expert in the lower realms was used to hiding his strength. Without special circumstances, no one could force him to his limits. Chu Xiu even suspected that the old Taoist master might not have used his full strength when they attacked Jun Wuxian. Yi Xiaonan said in a deep voice, Cult Master Chu, why did you call us here? If there's nothing urgent, I will be returning to the moon-worshipping church to train in seclusion. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, of course there is, and it's a very important matter. I'm sure the two of you have heard some of the rumors in the Jianghu recently. Ever since the Daoist came to the lower realms, they have excavated quite a few remnants and existences from 10,000 years ago. I have also participated in this. Now, I have confirmed that there is a remnant from 10,000 years ago in the land of West Chu. I also have some information and clues. However, West Chu is not within the sphere of influence of the Kunlun devil cult. It's not convenient for me to bring a large number of disciples into West Chu. So, I want to cooperate with the West Chu royal family, the moon-worshipping church, and the celestial master mansion. The West Chu royal family will send a large number of people to search for the remnant. After finding the place, the three of us will explore it together. I only want one of the items, and the other treasures will be divided according to the amount of effort we put in. What do the two of you think? Yi Xiaonan thought for less than 3 breaths of time before nodding and saying, okay. The old Taoist master didn't ask any more questions. After thinking for a moment, he nodded and said, since Cult Master Chu said so, the Celestial Master Mansion is willing to cooperate. Chapter 14:11. Yi Xiaonan and Old Celestial Master agreed very quickly, so quickly that it was beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. In fact, even Chu Xiu himself had not realized that his prestige in the martial arts world in the lower realms had actually risen to a peak level. Although most of the warriors in the lower realms hated Chu Xiu, whether they were enemies or passers-by, at least they had a common understanding, and that was that those who had cooperated with Chu Xiu would not suffer as long as they did not play any tricks. This was the same even in the Daoist world. Even though the Heaven's Treasure Temple had fallen out with Chu Xiu, the Heaven's Treasure Temple still believed that Chu Xiu was absolutely qualified to be an ally. This time, Chu Xiu had personally come to find them. Although Yi Xiaonan and Old Celestial Master did not even know the name and origin of the relic, they dared to believe in Chu Xiu. They believed that Chu Xiu would not deceive them about this kind of thing. Chu Xiu was stunned for a moment before he laughed and said, "In that case, Your Majesty, please send people to look for clues about the relic first. The moon-worshipping cult and the Celestial Master Mansion will also need to send some people. No one will come to the Kunlun Devil cult except me. After all, there are too many forces watching me now. If my subordinates make any moves, they will soon be noticed." In the eyes of those powers in the Great Haven Law Domain, the only power worth paying attention to in the entire lower realm was Chu Xiu's Kunlun demon sect. Therefore, there were quite a number of powers who were secretly eyeing him. No one really cared about the other forces. No matter what they did, no one would care. Yi Xiaonan and Old Celestial Master nodded and went back to make preparations. The efficiency of the West Chu royal family was still very high. Perhaps it was related to the small size of West Chu. According to the information that Chu Xiu had given about the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace, the West Chu royal family had actually locked onto the approximate location of the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace within 10 days. In a valley close to the south of the West Chu Kingdom's 10,000 mountains, the old Heavenly Master said with some hesitation, "Your Majesty, are you sure you didn't find the wrong place? It's not that I'm doubting Your Majesty, but this place is not remote. It belongs to the periphery of the 100,000 mountains. There was even a time when my Taoist master's mansion set up the training area for our disciples here. If there are relics here, they should have been discovered long ago." Although Meng Yunxing was the emperor, the West Chu territory was small and there was still the Daoist in the lower realm, so there were many matters of the Jianghu that he couldn't manage. So he didn't have much to do, so he followed Chu Xiu and the others to investigate the ruins. Hearing that, Meng Yunxing said helplessly, "It shouldn't be wrong. I had my suspicions before, so I followed the clues that Sect Master Chu gave me and carefully investigated several times. In the end, I confirmed that it should be here." Chu Xiu said calmly, "Old Heavenly Master, there's no need to doubt it. This is the place. You didn't realize it before because the time wasn't right. I wonder if you believe in karma and fate, Old Heavenly Master?" Old Heavenly Master said hesitantly, "It's hard to say. I've lived for so many years and seen so many things. I didn't believe it before, but I'm starting to believe it recently." Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "I didn't believe it before either, but there are some things that I have to believe in. In the era of great battles and the arrival of a new era, things that were overlooked and undiscovered before are popping up like bamboo shoots after the rain. One or two is a coincidence, but too many and it becomes karma and fate. It's inevitable. Just like the great calamity 10,000 years ago, there's more than one choice, and there's more than one sign. Perhaps if those ancient powerhouses had made another choice 10,000 years ago, the world would be a different place. Now that another 10,000 years have passed, the reappearance of these ruins might be a sign, and we are the ones who made that choice." Old Heavenly Master had never thought of such a serious matter when he saw Chu Xiu bring up the matter to the great calamity of the ancient era. He knew that the underworld had changed, but he didn't think that it wasn't just the underworld that had changed, but the world that they existed in. Yi Xiaonan said faintly, "Start digging." When the West Chu soldiers heard this, they immediately began to dig in the valley. They were the elites of the West Chu army, so when they dug, their speed was naturally very fast. Half a day later, the group dug out a strange door below. It was just an empty stone door, but it was covered with arrays. Moreover, there were various traces of bombardment on the stone door. Chu Xiu said, "Next, I'll have to trouble Celestial Master Mansion and moon-worshipping cult to take action." The myriad Dao celestial palaces arrays belong to the Dao lineage, so we need Dao sects array masters to break the array. There might be some dangers, and we also need moon-worshipping cult's goo worms to explore the way. Old Heavenly Master nodded and sent Celestial Master Mansion's array masters to break the array. In the Dao sects of the lower realm, true martial cults should be the strongest in terms of arrays. However, Celestial Master Mansion's array was also very unique, and that was violence. There was no need to explore how strong the other party's array was. They directly began to pile up thunder arrays and break the array by force. Dozens of thunder arrays were piled up, and in an instant, the array on the stone door was already somewhat damaged. When everyone pushed the stone door open, the entrance to another space was revealed. Moon-worshipping cult's high priest stood up and bit his finger. Suddenly, a few golden flying insects with dozens of eyes on their heads flew out of his sleeve. Each of them absorbed a drop of his blood and flew into the space. Moon-worshipping cult's high priest formed a huge black fog in front of him, and the appearance of the ruins was revealed in front of everyone. It was a ruined wall that seemed to have experienced countless disasters. It was simply a piece of scorched earth, and there were only a few buildings that were intact. However, there was no danger in the surroundings, only dead silence. Chu Xiu and the others looked at each other and stepped into it. Top sects like the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace from the primordial era all had their own independent space. Unfortunately, in the face of the great ancient calamity, even a small independent space could not withstand the great ancient calamity. Old Celestial Master looked at the large ruins around him, shook his head, and sighed. It's a pity that the existence of Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace is also recorded in the Celestial Master Mansion. It was the only Dao sect that was qualified to compete with Three Pure Palace 10,000 years ago, but now it has been destroyed here. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Wrong, Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace may be the second Dao sect 10,000 years ago, but it does not mean that they are qualified to compete with Three Pure Palace. If they could compete with Three Pure Palace, they should be in the Daoist northern region with Three Pure Palace, and not be destroyed in the great ancient calamity." Sometimes, the gap between the first and second was so big that the former could crush the latter. Other than some ruins, there were some sporadic buildings that were not damaged, or the damage was relatively small. These places were investigated by moon-worshipping cult and Celestial Master Mansion. Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace was formed by many Dao sects that did not recognize Three Pure Palaces' orthodoxy. These places were almost all the former bases of those Dao sects, and the old Celestial Master and the others had almost all obtained different cultivation techniques. Chu Xiu did not fight with them because there was no need. What he wanted was the core existence of Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace, a Dao scripture that was different from Three Pure Palaces' orthodoxy. Only it would be valued by Three Pure Palace. Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace was very large, and everyone gradually spread out to explore. Chu Xiu was also sensing the center of this small world, but at this moment, there was a sudden sound in front of him, and there was a wave of earth energy fluctuation. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Could it be that there was still something alive in Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace? This kind of thing had to be guarded against, such as the original god in the original god palace, and the Tan sect's evil intent suppressed in Myriad Buddha Palace. They looked at each other and walked forward. They actually bumped into a group of martial artists in black robes. There were more than 100 of them, and their auras were powerful. There were as many as 4 martial immortals. Old Celestial Master's expression changed slightly, and he transmitted his voice to Chu Xiu. "It's people from Mysterious Heaven Realm." Mysterious Heaven Realm was a sect in the northern region, second only to Three Pure Palace. Of course, just like Three Pure Palace and Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace 10,000 years ago, Mysterious Heaven Realm, the second strongest sect in the Dao sects, and Three Pure Palace, the first strongest sect in the Dao sects, was like heaven and earth. The strongest person in the sect was a martial immortal at the 8th heaven. Chu Xiu did not have any dealings with people from Mysterious Heaven Realm in the Daoist region, and he did not expect to bump into them here. The door outside was guarded by people from West Chu, and everyone within a 10-mile radius had been cleared. For people from mysterious heaven realm to appear here meant that this place was too big, and there might be more than one entrance. Chu Xiu was the first to react. He smiled brightly at the people from mysterious heaven realm, and said, "I did not expect to meet the Taoist masters from mysterious heaven realm here. What a coincidence." The people in the mysterious heaven realm all had ugly expressions on their faces. They thought they were the first to discover the myriad Dao heavenly palace, and they did not expect someone else to beat them to it. Among the martial artists from mysterious heaven realm, the leader was a middle-aged man wearing a black robe with star patterns and a black jade crown. He looked imposing. He was the sect master of mysterious heaven realm, an 8th heaven martial immortal, Dao Lord Mysterious Heaven, Bai Yuchen. Bai Yuchen had not met Chu Xiu before, but he naturally recognized Chu Xiu. Hearing this, Bai Yuchen chuckled and said, "It is indeed fate, but Cult Master Chu seems to have entered the wrong place. West Chu is not within Cult Master Chu's sphere of influence, and this is a relic of my Dao lineage. Why would Cult Master Chu, as a member of the Demon Dao, appear here?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Although I am not a member of the Dao sects, Celestial Master Mansion is. My Kunlun Devil Cult and Celestial Master Mansion have been friends for generations, and old Celestial Master and I are friends despite the difference in age. Can't I help Celestial Master Mansion to explore the Dao relic?" Bai Yuchen pointed at Yi Xiaonan and asked, "Moon-worshipping cult and Celestial Master Mansion are friends?" Yi Xiaonan nodded expressionlessly and pointed at Old Celestial Master. "I, Old Celestial Master, am a good friend." Bai Yuchen's face darkened. He was blatantly lying. Did he really think that he was an idiot? Chapter 14:12. Although Bai Yuchen was not a cultivator from the mortal world, there were so many Daoist sects that came to the mortal world. Apart from a few rogue cultivators who did not have any channels, the rest had to inquire about the structure of the forces in the mortal world and the basic general knowledge. Even if he did not know these, the Daoist would definitely investigate Chu Xiu, who had stirred up the entire Daoist and the mortal world at the same time. It was not a secret. Chu Xiu even said that he was friends with the Celestial Master Mansion. Friends my ass. The ancestors of the Celestial Master Mansion had died in the hands of the Kunlun Devil cult. It was more like a feud. Moreover, although the old Celestial Master had cooperated with Chu Xiu, it was just a cooperation. Friends? Did he really think that he was an idiot? The most hateful person was Yi Xiaonan. He did not even bother to make up an excuse and just used a few words to brush him off. Bai Yuchen turned his gaze to the old Celestial Master and said with a faint smile, "Fellow Daoist Zhang of the Celestial Master Mansion, is what they said true? As far as I know, the relationship between the righteous and demonic sects in the mortal world is not very harmonious. This place is the Myriad Dao Palace, a relic that belongs to the Daoist lineage. Yet, you hid it from us and explored with the demonic sections. Isn't this a little unreasonable?" There was a hint of threat in Bai Yuchen's words, which made the old Celestial Master's face turn black. To be honest, although they were both from the Daoist lineage, the old Celestial Master did not dare to offend the Three Pristines Temple and the mysterious heaven realm. When the Daoist first came to the mortal world, the old Celestial Master naturally had to pay a visit to the Three Pristines Temple as the Supreme Dao sect. He could not let them come to him personally, right? In the end, after the old Celestial Master went, the person in charge of the Three Pristines Temple happened to be discussing with Bai Yuchen what to do in the mortal world. He only saw him after more than 2 hours. Although the attitude of the Three Pristines Temple was not arrogant, there was a hint of contempt. Obviously, they did not take the Celestial Master Mansion, the leader of the Dao sects in the mortal world, seriously. In their opinion, only the true martial sect in the Dao sect of the lower realm was worthy of their attention. The reason was because of Ning Xuanji, who was behind the true martial sect. At that time, Bai Yuchen had also met the old Taoist master face to face, and his attitude was even worse than the Three Pristines Temple. The Three Pristines Palace, as the supreme leader of Taoism, had to at least consider the issue of their own image. After all, they still had to establish a sect in the mortal world, so they could not go too far. The mysterious heaven realm was the second most powerful realm in the Dao sect, so they did not need to care about their image. Bai Yuchen did not care about the old celestial master, who was only at the third firmament, at all. The old Taoist master had lived for more than 500 years, so he still had this bit of forbearance. When he was in the Three Pristines Hall, he did not flare up and behaved very appropriately. However, he felt a little upset. When he was in the lower realm, he was the most senior martial artist, highly respected. Whether it was the shockingly talented Yi Xiaonan or the monstrous Chu Xiu who had almost unified the Jianghu, although their strength was superior to his, their attitudes were not so excessive, and they all gave him face. Although the old Taoist master had long understood the principle that strength determined everything after living for so long, he still felt a little upset. At that moment, when he heard Bai Yuchen's threatening words, the old Taoist master sneered, "How long has it been since Sect Master Bai came to the mortal world? How do you know that I have a bad relationship with Cult Master Chu and Cult Master Yi? I like to make friends, and I especially like to make friends with young and talented experts like Cult Master Chu and Cult Master Yi. Can't I? Also, Sect Master Bai, you keep saying that we are from the Dao sect and that I did not report it. However, since you appeared here, you obviously knew about the existence of the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace. Did you report it to the Three Pristines Temple? Why do I only see people from the mysterious heaven realm and not the Three Pristines Temple? Could it be that Sect Master Bai doesn't regard the Three Pristines Temple as part of the Dao sect?" After saying that, Bai Yuchen's face turned a little dark. Chu Xiu praised in his heart. Although the old Taoist master appeared to be a person of virtue and prestige most of the time, he had lived for 500 years after all. He had seen all kinds of storms and waves, after all. He was very sharp when it came to arguing with people, hitting the mysterious heaven realm's weak spot. The mysterious heaven realm's strength in the northern region was second only to the Three Pristines Temple. On the surface, they also submitted to the Three Pristines Temple and followed their lead. However, the problem was the mysterious heaven realm really so loyal to the Three Pristines Temple that it did not have any ulterior motives? Of course, that was impossible. If that was the case, the mysterious heaven realm could just directly merge with the Three Pristines Temple. What was the point of keeping the inheritance? Now that the people from the mysterious heaven realm had appeared here, but they did not report to the Three Pristines Temple, it was enough to explain a lot of things. How dare you? How dare you? Bai Yuchen's expression turned cold, and a powerful pressure suddenly came crushing toward the old Taoist master. The cultivation of the third heaven was nothing to Bai Yuchen. Although they were both martial immortals, there was a world of difference. In Bai Yuchen's eyes, the strength of the celestial master mansion was nothing. He could destroy it with a wave of his hand. An old fellow who did not know the difference between life and death actually dared to take advantage of his seniority in front of him. Did he really think that he would not make a move on the face and reputation of the Dao lineage? The Three Pristines Temple wanted face and reputation, but the mysterious heaven realm did not care about that. The moment Bai Yuchen attacked, Chu Xiu took a step forward, and the monstrous demonic flames around him instantly rose, crushing the aura. Bai Yuchen, do you really think I'm a dead man? Don't talk to me about the Dao sects and demonic Dao. You can enter the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace because of your own ability, and I can naturally enter as well. You want to monopolize the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace, but I also want it. Nonsense, why don't we just rely on strength? The fist is hard, the blade is sharp, and the words are loud and clear. As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, he pulled out the Array Destruction Saber from his waist and slashed at Bai Yuchen with the Devouring Heaven Saber. In the Dalu Ocean, Chu Xiu did not have any enmity with the mysterious heaven realm. The other party had always followed behind the Three Pristines Temple and kept a low profile. But from the looks of it, the mysterious heaven realm was not keeping a low profile, but really thought of itself as the second in the Three Pristines Temple. The Three Pristines Temple could represent the Dao sect, but he, the mysterious heaven realm, was not qualified to represent the Dao sect. Bai Yuchen still wanted to use the entire Dao sect to suppress him. What a joke! Did he not know if the mysterious heaven realm was qualified or not? Chu Xiu only wanted the Tao scriptures in the myriad Tao heavenly palace. If the mysterious heaven realm wanted to join hands to explore, Chu Xiu did not mind having another ally. However, since the other party wanted to monopolize it, then it would depend on their own strength. Perhaps it was because the northern region had been peaceful for a long time, and the mysterious heaven realm had been working with the Three Pristines Temple most of the time. They were unable to react to Chu Xiu's crude method of drawing his blade at the slightest disagreement. When Chu Xiu had already slashed out, Bai Yuchen shouted, "Attack!" As soon as he said that, Bai Yuchen waved the black jade horsetail whisk in his hand. The void rippled like water, creating waves of black ripples. The entire space seemed to have fallen into a boundless black water, blocking the heaven-devouring blade. The tyrannical power of the heaven-devouring blade could even devour the power of laws, so it could also devour the black water. However, the black water seemed to be endless, and it actually forcefully exhausted the power of the heaven-devouring blade. Bai Yuchen snorted coldly, "Chu Xiu, don't think that you can look down on the heroes of the world just because you caused a lot of waves in the eastern region and the southern region. The mysterious heaven realm hides in the northern region only because we don't want to take action, not because we don't dare to take action." He had heard of Chu Xiu's achievements in the Daoist world. The strongest he had done was kill Yi Weikong of Cold River City. However, the older generation of Daoist martial artists were actually aware of Yi Weikong's strength. Although he and Meng Xinghe were good friends, the difference in talent between the two was huge. Yi Weikong had already entered the stage of qi and blood decline when he reached the 7th heaven. It was absolutely impossible for him to reach the 8th heaven. Therefore, the world was saying that Chu Xiu had killed the 8th heaven Yi Weikong. However, in the opinion of Bai Yuchen and the others, rather than saying that Chu Xiu had killed Yi Weikong, it was better to say that Yi Weikong had killed himself after becoming a demon. Therefore, Bai Yuchen, who hadn't fought with Chu Xiu, had always felt that Chu Xiu was somewhat unworthy of his name. A faint smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. "Although I, Chu Xiu, am arrogant, I have never looked down on the heroes of the world. I just don't take your mysterious heaven realm seriously. What's there to be proud of for a sect that can only echo the Three Pure Palace's words? You even took advantage of the fact that the Three Pure Palace wasn't paying attention to play tricks in the dark. Sect Master Bai, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're not even qualified to be a dog." Before Bai Yuchen could get angry, a mark suddenly appeared on Chu Xiu's forehead, and the third eye appeared on top of Chu Xiu's head. Earlier, Chu Xiu had used the power of good fortune to passively draw out the yin and yang essences in his body. He had no idea how much power he could draw out. In any case, it would be very, very strong. The backlash would also be very strong. Now, Chu Xiu was using the third eye on top of his head to draw on the power of origin. The power of yin and yang first poured into the third eye before being controlled by Chu Xiu. This power was completely under Chu Xiu's control. In the third eye, the power of yin and yang bloomed and turned into a black and white divine light that swept towards the black water. In an instant, the black water began to disintegrate. The power of yin and yang was the power of origin. The combination of the two was enough to extinguish 99% of the power in this world. Bai Yuchen's expression changed slightly. He formed a seal with his hand and the boundless black water surged and condensed into a Dharma figure in midair. The figure was wearing a black dragon robe and a black jade dragon crown. It had a dignified appearance and 4 eyes. This was the Mystic Heaven realm worshipped Emperor Lord Mystic Heaven, a god that didn't exist. It was said that when the Mystic Heaven realm was in the lower realm, it was built in a deep pool of black water in the north. The black water was connected to the sky and earth, and it was formed by the turbid air of the world. The Mystic Heaven realm lord was a god created by the power of the black water in the Mystic Heaven realm. It was a god acquired, but it had the power of a connate god. The Mystic Heaven realm lord's Dharma figure formed a seal with his hand. As the seal unfolded, half the sky seemed to turn into a boundless domain of black water that crushed down on Chu Xiu. The power of yin and yang that bloomed from the third eye on Chu Xiu's forehead grew stronger. However, this time, it wasn't released. Instead, it was condensed in Chu Xiu's hands. He put his palms together, and the yin and yang tore at each other. The two powers of origin affected the world and turned into a giant grindstone that crushed down. All things returned to chaos. Chapter 14:13. The power of the worldly millstone unleashed with his third eye was not as strong as before. In fact, it was slightly weaker than before. However, the fatal and unpredictable backlash was gone, allowing Chu Xiu to unleash it at will. Under the crushing force of the worldly millstone, the Blackwater Absolute Domain was shattered. Even Emperor Xuantian's Dharma idol was torn apart. Bai Yuchen's expression finally changed a little. Sixth heaven. There's something wrong with Chu Xiu's strength. When did he reach the sixth heaven? One must know that Chu Xiu was a cultivator from the Daoist Divine Palace. How many years had it been since he reached the martial immortal realm? If it were a martial immortal without the accumulation of a sect, they would likely still be consolidating their cultivation at the second heaven. However, Chu Xiu had already stepped into the sixth heaven. Furthermore, the battle prowess he displayed caused even Bai Yuchen, a eighth heaven martial immortal, to feel incomparable fear. Chu Xiu shook his head lightly. They were both in the eighth heaven martial immortal realm, but Bai Yuchen was still inferior to Yanma of the Shiva Palace. Chu Xiu was confident that he could face Yanma after he unleashed his peak cultivation through a secret technique. However, he had no chance of winning, so he could only face him head-on. However, Chu Xiu was still confident in facing Bai Yuchen. At that moment, the people from the moon-worshipping cult and celestial master mansion had already started fighting with the profound heaven realm cultivators. Chu Xiu had never come into contact with a mysterious heaven realm martial artist before, so he thought that mysterious heaven realm martial artists were low-key and modest. But in fact, mysterious heaven realm martial artists were low-key, but they were not modest at all. It was not only Bai Yuchen, the sect master. The other profound heaven realm cultivators subconsciously compared themselves to the Three Pristine Palace, believing that they were second only to the Three Pristine Palace. Although that was indeed the case in the northern region, it was not because the profound heaven realm was strong. Instead, it was because there were no powerful sects in the entire northern region. Therefore, when the profound heaven realm cultivators looked at the moon-worshipping cult and celestial master mansion cultivators from the lower realms, they naturally looked down on them. However, when the two sides started fighting, the expressions of the mysterious heaven realm cultivators changed. The humiliation and contempt that the old Taoist master had suffered in the Three Pristines Palace and the mysterious heaven realm had already made him angry. At this time, he was so angry that he released his thunder chi. It was as if he was young and crazy. Chu Xiu couldn't help but look at him. His opponent was a fourth heaven martial immortal. However, before he could say anything, he was enveloped by countless bolts of thunder. 9 heavens divine lightning, purple heaven divine lightning, divine firmament demon slaying lightning, 5 lightning execution law, and so on were all thrown over. The sky was completely enveloped by thunder. The martial immortal was struck dumb by the series of thunder. When he came back to his senses, he held the black water seal in his hand and turned it into a black water domain to protect himself. However, the old Taoist master had already secretly weaved the heavenly lightning scroll with the power of the rules. Thousands of lightning bolts fell at the same time. This was the strongest secret technique the previous heavenly master had grasped. After the old heavenly master had seen the previous heavenly master use it in the West Chu dragon vein, he had gone back to carefully study it. Borrowing its power, he was able to simulate 90% of its power. Under the heavenly lightning scroll, the mysterious heaven realm cultivator's black water domain was directly shattered. Before he could defend himself, the old Taoist master made a seal with both hands. A dragon and a tiger. The dragon was Yang Thunder, and the tiger was Yin Thunder. The dragon and tiger converged and fused. Yin and Yang fused and tore at the mysterious heaven realm martial immortal. With a roaring thunderstorm, it was as if the world was going to be destroyed by lightning. Although the old Taoist master was one heaven lower than his opponent, the power brought by his deep accumulation and 500 years of battle experience made the old Taoist master's battle strength extremely shocking. He instantly suppressed his opponent and started beating him up from the beginning. He didn't even give his opponent a chance to fight back. And Yi Xiaonan was even more so. He was still fighting 1 against 2. There were still 2 martial immortals, one at the 5th heaven and the other at the 3rd heaven. 7 colored clouds coiled around Yi Xiaonan's hand and turned into an identical Yi Xiaonan. The clone created by the sovereign twin lives Gu charged straight at the 3rd heaven martial immortal. Although Yi Xiaonan was strong, it was unrealistic to think that he could defeat a 3rd heaven martial immortal with just a clone. But it wasn't a problem to hold off his opponent for now. Facing a martial immortal of the same rank, he could basically beat him up. Wherever the heaven-mending finger passed, all things crumbled and decomposed, but then started to reform again, but according to Yi Xiaonan's rules. That mysterious heaven realm martial immortal discovered that the rules of power around him had already started to change. He immediately pulled out the black jade sword at his waist and carved formation runes with sword chi in the void. Instantly, black light soared into the sky and turned into countless black water waves that poured down from the sky. Wherever it passed, it would assimilate and divide any power. Yi Xiaonan met it with a simple fist seal. Under the heaven-mending seal, the black water waves were fused and actually counteracted his own power. The next moment, Yi Xiaonan waved his hand and the light of the moon's shadow suddenly appeared in the sky. Space was torn apart. Boundless sharpness seemed to fall from the moon's shadow and slashed straight at him. Yi Xiaonan's move was somewhat similar to Chu Xiu's clear sky reflecting shadow. In fact, he was inspired when he saw Chu Xiu perform clear sky reflecting shadow in the Elysium. He combined his weapon Crescent Blade and the Heaven-Mending Sutra to create a mystic art. This move wasn't as overbearing as Chu Xiu's clear sky reflecting shadow, but its power was also extremely amazing. The boundless sharpness suddenly shrouded him, making him resist it bitterly. On the martial immortal side, although the mysterious heaven realm martial immortal was at a disadvantage, the martial immortal was not so easy to defeat. What really caused casualties to the mysterious heaven realm martial immortal was the martial artist below martial immortal. That person was Zhang Qingjin. Chu Xiu hadn't seen Zhang Qingjin for a long time. Since the other party stepped into the real pellet state, he had been cultivating behind closed doors in the Taoist master mansion. The former number 1 on the Longhu list had been completely silent in the underworld. Except for the martial artists of the same era as Zhang Qingjin, almost no one could remember his name. But last time when Chu Xiu came to the Taoist master mansion to find the old Taoist master to join forces, Chu Xiu discovered that Zhang Qingjin's body was nurturing a very strong power. If this power broke out completely, the power would be extremely amazing. And now it seemed that Zhang Qingjin had obviously completely broken out that power. Without the help of the Daoist's power, Zhang Qingjin's strength had caught up and surpassed Long Longer, Luo Feiheng and the others, stepping into the realm of half-step martial immortal. At this time, Zhang Qingjin had even merged with the golden core of thunder in his body. Although he was not a martial immortal, the golden core of thunder in his body could passively guide the rules of heaven and earth, allowing Zhang Qingjin to exert power infinitely close to the realm of martial immortal. His body had been surrounded by countless thunderbolts. With a wave of his hand, he could guide the rules of thunder, releasing a large amount of thunderbolts that bombarded his opponent. Although in the eyes of a real martial immortal, this method of passively guiding the rules of heaven and earth was nothing. But among this group of mysterious heaven and earth realm martial artists, Zhang Qingjin was almost invincible. In an instant, more than a dozen martial artists had died or been crippled by his hands. Bai Yuchen could no longer care about fighting with Chu Xiu. Although the Myriad Dao Heavenly Palace was precious, it was not worth it for him to throw all his mysterious heaven realm disciples here. Retreat! Everyone retreat! Bai Yuchen shouted. Black water formation runes were set up around him, creating ripples in front of him, blocking Chu Xiu's attack. At the same time, the other mysterious heaven realm martial artists immediately retreated. Bai Yuchen snorted coldly. After all, he was from the Dao sect. Although he was arrogant, he still had manners. Seeing that he could not win, he did not say any harsh words. Instead, he turned around and left with his people. Yi Xiaonan withdrew his clone, walked to Chu Xiu's side, and asked, "Should we chase?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "No. Even if we catch up, can we kill them all?" With 4 martial immortals present, unless Chu Xiu brought all of the Kunlun demon cult subordinates over, it would be impossible for them to stay here. With this amount of people, it would already be pretty good for them to be able to gain the upper hand. But when Yi Xiaonan heard this, he thought for a moment and nodded. There is a certain possibility. Chu Xiu was speechless. Then, he said, "It's not worth it even if it's possible. We came to the relic for treasures, not to fight to the death with the mysterious heaven realm. Although the mysterious heaven realm was temporarily beaten back by us, the relic of the myriad Dao heavenly palace is too big. The mysterious heaven realm will definitely not retreat. They will choose other places to explore. We don't have time to waste. Let's split up and explore for now. But don't be too far away from each other. It's enough for 3 sides to support each other. I only want the Dao scriptures. You two can split the rest equally." Yi Xiaonan and the old celestial master nodded. This was what they had agreed on before. The moon-worshipping cult didn't need the Dao scriptures. They only needed the various strange secret techniques, formations, and other miscellaneous things in the myriad Dao heavenly palace. The more complicated, the better. Although the Dao scriptures were very useful to the celestial master abode, they couldn't use them now. Simply put, the Dao scriptures of the myriad Dao heavenly palace were too high-end. Even the old celestial master couldn't guarantee that he could understand them all. So, even if the celestial master abode snatched those things, they wouldn't be able to protect them with their current strength. It was better to let Chu Xiu take some ancient books and other things left behind by the Dao sect's branches. After the discussion, the 3 parties began to spread out a certain distance, and each party separately explored in a certain direction. 90% of the palaces in the myriad Dao heavenly palace were destroyed in the ancient calamity. So, there weren't many palaces that could be explored. Chu Xiu landed in a palace with an 8 trigrams array. This place was quite complete. It should have been protected by an extremely strong formation, which allowed it to survive the ancient calamity. Chu Xiu pushed open the rotten doors of the hall and entered. In the middle of the hall, there was also a huge 8 formation diagram, and a skeleton sat in the middle. As Chu Xiu pushed open the doors and entered, it immediately turned into ashes. Looking at the Tai Chi 8 trigrams Dao robe, it should be the owner of this palace. In front of the skeleton was a tortoise shell. However, the words on the tortoise shell made Chu Xiu's eyes shrink. Demon Lord, Yellow Springs, Great Calamity, Longevity. These words were engraved on the tortoise shell, but it made Chu Xiu involuntarily think of his own situation. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.